Good morning. Welcome to Casa Bacardí on March 4th, 2017. My name is Regina Rodriguez, PhD candidate at the University of Florida studying environmental engineering. And I have the pleasure of welcoming you to the 2017 CUBA Infrastructure Scholarship Competition, which we're here today. The hosting committee is made up of the two sponsoring organizations, the Association of Cuban-American Engineers and Cuban-American Association of Civil Engineers. I would like to remind everybody that this event is currently being broadcasted online and is accessible via the YouTube link on your program. It is also being broadcasted live at El Diario de Cuba online. So that's one of the main newspapers covering this feed. Buenos días a todos y bienvenido a Casa Bacardí en la Universidad de Miami. Mi nombre es Regina Rodríguez y soy una candidata de doctorado en Ingeniería del Medio Ambiente en la Universidad de la Florida. Es un placer hoy darle la bienvenida a la competencia de 2017 para las becas de infraestructura cubana. El comité anfitrión está compuesto de miembros de las dos organizaciones patrocinadoras de la Asociación de Ingenieros Cubanos Americanos y la Asociación de Cubanos Americanos Ingenieros Civiles. Muchas gracias por estar aquí hoy con nosotros. Queremos recordarle que la competencia está siendo transmitida en vivo y puede ser accesado usando el link que tienen en su invitación. El resto de la competencia y presentaciones continuarán en inglés. At this time, I would like to recognize the presidents of each organization and thank them for their support to this program. Mr. Teo Cuervo and Mr. Jose Acosta, can you stand up? Thank you so much. We would also like to recognize the generous support from the Institute of Cuban-American Studies and the Gosueta Foundation at Casa Bacardí, as well as Click Event Online and Common Grounds. We are also very grateful to Buya Gastrobar, owned by Mr. Carlos Interium, who has graciously sponsored the Cuban Infrastructure Competition with an event for 20,000 years for a 5-year sustainable commitment for a total of $100,000. Many of you may be familiar with the original Buya Gastrobar in Coral Gables, and they'll soon be able to check them out in several other locations outside of Doral and Winter Park. Prior to beginning our program today, which everybody's very excited about, and I would like to welcome Mr. Roger Puerto, the Cuban Infrastructure Committee Chair, to provide some introductory remarks. Roger has played a key role these past years leading this competition, as well as it's been growing more and more successfully now as it's reached a national level. Thank you, and please welcome Mr. Roger.
I got cards. I don't know how to use them, but I'll do my best. By the way, it's always hard to follow Regina. I can say so many things about Regina that it is incredible. She's one of the unique people in the world. She handles so much. She's actually went from bachelor's to the 4-year PhD program at the University of Florida. In addition to that, she works for a company, and based on what I hear, she's one of the lead sales people in the company already. And eventually she wants to teach. So Miami, FIU, Florida, it's a gem. She's a unique individual that can carry many, many things and can do many, many things at the same time. Very few people can do that. I definitely can't. But I want to start out by reading, and I hate to read, by reading a quote. And this quote comes from Henry R. Fuentes. So the FIU folks know Henry Fuentes. He is a professor and associate chair of the Department of Civil Engineering at FIU, Civil and Environmental Engineering at FIU. Here's what he had to say. He wanted to be here. He's not able to be here. But he says, your competition, and he's addressing us in an email that he sent to Regina. Your competition event is very impressive in both its important objective and the powerful mentoring of our future engineers. And basically that summarizes it in a nutshell. This, as Regina said earlier, is an organization that is actually jointly held by the two Cuban-American engineering societies, the Association of Cuban-American Engineers and the Association and the Cuban-American Association of Civil Engineers. And we're here today working together. But at this point, I want to recognize one of the founding members of the Association of Cuban-American Engineers. He's sitting in the back, Gonzalo Sanchez, or Guy Sanchez. Gonzalo had, he's everything to the Association of Cuban-American Engineers. He was one of the founding fathers, as I said, of the Association of Cuban Engineers. We changed the name 2 years ago to be more comprehensive because a lot of us are Cuban-Americans. And, we have our children and so on and so forth that are also Cuban-Americans or American Cubans. And we actually toyed with the name and actually came up with the Association of Cuban-American Engineers. He, in 2006, actually began to mold this over, and the concept of how can we get the young people involved and thinking about the future in Cuba. Well, since we happen to be two engineering organizations, the best way to do that is through engineering and high-level science. And the next thing is, how do we convey it to the people? So, we got together with the Civil Engineering Association, and from there, we began the competitions in 2010. So this is the 8th annual competition, and it has grown impressively, especially this year. And it is because of people like Victor Pujals, and I don't want to leave anybody out, Dr. Miguel Medina, Dr. Armando Perez, Dr. Helena Solo Gabriel, and some of the ways that we have actually moved, that,
I just want to clarify one thing about Gonzalo.
Mm-hmm.
Gonzalo Sanchez was the one that gave birth to the idea
Mm-hmm.
of bringing together the talents of Cuban-American engineers in exile to provide ideas on how to improve the infrastructure of Cuba when Cuba becomes free and democratic country. So
Correct.
we got to thank Gonzalo.
Yeah, and I thought I kind of summarized that, but I'm glad that you actually were more explicit. So basically, again, the Gonzalo Sanchez was actually the architect that actually came up with the concept of getting the engineers, the young engineers involved in working in an area or studying an area that is very, very much needed because it's a decayed Cuba infrastructure. So you look at it in every which way: transportation, environmental, agriculture. There's a tremendous amount of need, and the need for the future, especially, and the way that I see this is the end result is the Cuban people. The end result is what's going to improve the life of the Cuban people that has suffered through 56 years of a very brutal dictatorship. And that's the last political thing that I will say. But again, the one thing that basically is very impressive is how this has grown. And I want to go through the mission because the mission also embodies pretty much what Gonzalo had put forth. And let me not move away from this. The mission of the Cuba Infrastructure Committee is to promote a high level of engineering and science as they may apply to the future improvement of the island and to increase public awareness and interest in Cuba's infrastructure needs. And since we're talking about public awareness and increased public awareness, I want to recognize Blanca Silva, who's here today. And the reason why I want to do that is because we toyed for many, many years as we prepared for how are we going to publicize this. And we thought about bringing in the media and having the cocktail for the media, so on and so forth. And the media is hard to get to anywhere. So pretty much, Blanca had a lot of experience with the media, and she began to publicize that. And last year we had some articles that appear in the Nuevo Herald. This year, I was also interviewed last year. This year, Jerry and I were interviewed by Ninoska Perez of AM 710. I was also interviewed by Maricel Hernandez, and she's with 1210. Radio is going to be broadcast. It was pre-recorded. It will be broadcasted today. And the main reason for that is to publicize this so that people know what action, what activities we are taking to look forward to the improvement of the infrastructure in Cuba. So it's very, very important. And going back to the very beginning, I mean, for many years, we only had universities from the state of Florida. As a matter of fact, if you look back to last year, we had 5 teams competing for the prizes. They were all from the state of Florida. We had, there's a lot of, by the way, we meet monthly, and we're going to have a reprieve. We're not going to meet in March. So we're going to meet in April. So we'll meet the second Monday in April and continue. I'm working for the next year's cycle. So every year we basically go back and say, what did we learn from this past year? We're going to do the same thing this year. We have a lot of people that really are into it, that really help us a lot. So one of the things that we did this year, we went after the ABETS organization. ABETS is the accrediting organization for engineering. And Dr. Miguel Medina has some contacts with Duke and with ABETS, since he was a professor at Duke. Victor Pujals gave us a list of ABETS deans. Regina was able to actually talk to the people in ABETS, and there was an article that was published in ABETS. And I bet you some of you that are here today are because of what was published in ABETS. So that actually brought 33 people, 33 teams that were interested in participating in this competition. From the 33 teams, 15 actually submitted projects. So we basically, again, we learned a lot because we never have had that. So what do? We can only bring 6 finalists. So we actually had the judges judge the 15 projects that were submitted, the written part of the presentation on the 15 projects that were submitted. As a result of that, we have 6 finalists, and the 6 finalists are here today. Finalists from the University of Florida, Florida Institute of Technology, FIT, which is the first time ever that we have a team from FIT, so thank you very much, we welcome you. Florida has always been involved in the competition. We've had multiple teams in the past also. We also have a team from FIU. Again, FIU have been involved, as FIU is the other local university, Florida International University in Miami. They have also been involved in the past. And we have a team from the University of Alabama, properly named Team Saban. What can I say? As a Gator, I mean, what can I say? And we also have a team from the University of Missouri at Kansas City. So again, we are global. This is now a global participation. For many, many years, we only had Cuban-Americans or Latin Americans participating. Well, the team that won last year from the University of Florida, I had a girl from Bangladesh, had a girl from India, and had a man from Jacksonville. So that basically tells you how global this is, how we have become a global organization. Jerry again. Jerry's my alter ego, by the way.
She's here, she's the Senate.
Okay.
She's the winner from.
She's one of the members that won last year from the University of Florida. So basically the boundaries, the Florida boundaries have been broken, and we hope that we break them forever. I will ask for you guys, for each of your teams, especially the ones outside the state of Florida, to publicize this in your universities, make sure people know, because we're going to do this again. Okay, so this is, and by the way, there's an opportunity at the end of the presentation. We're going to have Elena Solo Gabriel, Dr. Elena Solo Gabriel, who is Associate Dean of Engineering at the University of Miami, talk to you about the ASCE, which is the Association for Study of the Cuban Economy, and they have their presentations in June. A lot of the folks that have presented with us also have presented with them. So she's going to expand on that a little bit more. And before I leave, and by the way, I want to make sure that you know that all of you are winners. All of the people that are here today, all of the teams that are here today are winners. You actually went through a very, very, very hard, and the other thing that I don't want to forget, I know how hard it is to do what you're doing. This is extracurricular activity. The schools don't give you credit. So you're doing this because you want to get better and you want to be better. So you have accomplished that. This is very hard to do. I went through school and I would have never done it. But so I know how hard, so every one of you are winners. So again, thank you for what you do. Thank you for being here today, and best of luck to all of you. I also want to recognize Wayne Cruz, the gentleman there with the computers and all. I mean, he's a videographer, has been doing this for a number of years, does an excellent job. This is, as Regina said, it's been broadcasted on YouTube. So again, I don't want to take any more time because we got to be out of here. Thank you very much, and any questions, see me.
Thank you, Roger. I would like to take this brief moment to recognize our distinguished panel of judges. And this panel of judges combines decades of experience in different infrastructure sectors that will be covered here today. And they have exceptionally impressive resumes, which are very briefly summarized in your program. You can only fit several lines, so I do value them, and I really appreciate them. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Vladimir Cruz. Dr. Vladimir, can you stand up? Dr. Vladimir is an expert in the field of animal production and agriculture. With more than 50 years of experience, Dr. Cruz is the director of Agropo System and Agricultural and Livestock Division of Pon Mas Corporation. He's also an international development representative of the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So we really value your assistance here. Thank you. Up next is Dr. Mario Sergio Golab. Dr. Mario is a multidisciplinary engineering, international management, law, and professional with over 40 years of experience. Dr. Golab is a U.S. Patent Office registered patent attorney and managing attorney at Golab Intellectual Property. Dr. Golab is a graduate of the Argentine Air Force, Technion Israel Institute of Technology, University of California, Berkeley, Thunderbird School of Global Management, this goes on, and the University of New Hampshire Franklin Pierce Intellectual Property Center. So this is very exciting to have such an expert on not just engineering, but global and patenting office, as some of these technologies can certainly be patentable. So thank you for your assistance here. Up third is Mr. Eduardo Infante. Mr. Eduardo was born in Santiago de Cuba, and at the age of 15 years old, he was sent by his parents to the United States. He served in the U.S. Army and graduated with a bachelor degree of electrical engineering from the University of Miami. He worked with Florida Power and Light for over 33 years in design. 43. In design, installation, operation, management of distribution and electrical grid before starting his own consulting company after retirement. So we really value your expertise here. Thank you so much.
May I just say a word? It is a pleasure to be here to mentor you and to learn. And engineers always will be learning. You will learn until the day you die. This experience will get you to be a better person. And the winners and the losers, there are no losers. You're all winners. And I'm here to share and enjoy that.
Thank you. To his left is Mr. Rafael Palacios. And Mr. Rafael attended the University of South Florida in Tampa and graduated in 1971 as a Dean's List Scholar with a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering with an emphasis on energy conversion and mechanical design. Palacios' professional career spans a period of 5 decades where he has proven to be a leader in mechanical engineering, contracting field with a number of significant projects exceeding a total of $1 billion in authoring in a number of publications. So thank you so much, too. Our fifth judge today is Mr. Javier Rodriguez. Mr. Javier Rodriguez has served as the executive director of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority since March of 2007. He oversees Miami-Dade Expressway Authority's capital improvement plans. Prior to joining MDX, Mr. Rodriguez served as the Director of Transportation Systems Development with the Department of Transportation in Florida, serving Miami-Dade and Monroe counties. So thank you. Last but not least, and he is actually unable to be here today, but he was certainly an integral part of our first round of written reports judging, is Mr. Eduardo Vega. He's certainly been part of this program for several years. Unfortunately, he was not able to be here today. But Mr. Eduardo Vega is a professional engineer with 45 years of experience, which included 35 dedicated to county government service in various capacities. Mr. Vega is currently the Senior Vice President of APCTE and has served as the Assistant Director for Engineering at the Miami-Dade Water and Sewer Department, where he directed engineering design, construction management program, and infrastructure development activities. So we are very fortunate to have them all here today and lending us their expertise and guidance as we move forward with some of these engineering projects. Thank you again for being here, and we very much value your participation. So, like mentioned previously, we received 15 project submissions in January for this 2017 Cuban infrastructure competition from submissions from across the U.S. The universities included University of Missouri, Florida International University, George Mason, University of Portland, University of Florida, California State University at Burlington, University of Alabama, North Carolina State, and the Florida Institute of Technology. So several reports and projects submitted from these universities, which have now completed to the top 6 teams. The judges have reviewed extensively for those 2 weeks in February the written reports and have their combined scores where the top 6 teams were invited here today. I would like to take the time to recognize the teams whose written reports also received higher than 30 out of 40 points, but unfortunately were not able to get to the top 6 position. Those 2 teams will also be rewarded as part of this competition. So those 2 teams that did not make it to top 6, but however did reach 30 points in their written proposals, was the University of California State, the Mine Bloggers, and their project was the replacement and construction of pavements with precast concrete. The second team was the North Carolina State University, Team Inspire Cuba, with the conversion of Maribu to charcoal for export and increased land arability in Cuba. So those 2 teams will also be receiving some compensation and award for their efforts. However, the top 6 teams was certainly crucial to get to, and it was not an easy judging as most of the judges were fighting for their best team. So today we'll complete the second part of the competition where the teams presenting each of their projects. Each team will make a 15-minute presentation directly followed by 10 minutes of questions and answers led by the panel of judges. At that time, online viewers who are also part of this program here today will be able to interact with the teams as they post some questions on our YouTube channel, should they wish to do that. The judges will score the presentations based on the following criteria: organization and delivery, coverage within the time limits of 15 minutes, proficiency in answering the technical questions, and quality and creativity of the presentation materials. That will be worth 60 points, which will then be added to the previous 40 points to elect the top winning team. The team with the highest score will be awarded a $6,000 scholarship award within the team for first place. Second place will be $4,000, and third place will be $2,000 scholarship. At this time, Without further ado, I would like to welcome the first student presentations. And this team is coming from the university right here in town, Florida International University. Their team name is Sol Urbano, represented by Azaz, Elaine, and Amir. And their mentor is Mr. Eric Sibila. So welcome them on.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present. Our team name is Sol Urbano, and for today's presentation, Elian, Izas, and I are planning to talk about our proposed project named as Smart Public Transportation Services using solar power bus stops. At the beginning of the presentations, we would like to talk about, executive summary, and then explain the PV technology bus stops, CUBA transportation infrastructures. And in the middle of the presentation, we're going to show the video clips and the methodology, analysis, discussion, planning activity, and finally conclusion will be presented. The main goal of the project is implementing the solar power bus stop in Havana, providing the public an opportunity to learn about feasibility of utilizing the solar energy, proposing planning activities to engage the stakeholders, and demonstrating a synergistic integration of interdisciplinary research team, including the transportation engineer, electrical engineers, and economists. Enhancing visibility at night and providing a greater safety, increasing the level of education regarding the green energy integrations are the main benefits of that project. The approach, this project has the three approach. The first is collecting the transportation and electrical information, and then estimating the overall cost of the proposed solar power bus stops. And the last, selecting the key bus stops for installing the PV technology. To complete the project, we reviewed the current PV technology implemented in transportation services, collected the information from Havana Transportation Services, and identified the actual component needed for calculating the cost, and finally collected and reviewed the actual, the manual and technical aspect of the component. At the end of the presentation, our achievement, our calculation of the power requirement for the electrical equipment for the solar power bus stops, for example, 60 watts for the lights. Also estimation of the overall cost in installations for the solar power bus. For example, $1,300 for one bus for providing the lights. And finally, selection of two bus stops from the bus tour in Havana Transportation Services. There are two concerns we would like to address in our project: the creation and adjustment of the governing laws for the implementations, and the time frame for shipment of the materials and the other related expenses. In the couple of next slides, I would like to talk about the PV technology for solar power bus stops. The PV systems usually consist of four major components following the solar panel. The solar panel is made of the modules of solar cells, which can be manufactured with the different type of the materials, such as polycrystalline silicon or monocrystalline silicon. The second item is the battery. The battery can be used to store the energy during the daytime, sunny time, and can be release it during the evening and the night. To prevent the battery from overcharging, charge controllers will be used for PV system technology. The charge controllers adjust the current and voltage from the solar panels for the battery characteristic to meet actually. For some applications, the AC inverter needs to be used to convert the DC powers to the AC power. These two pictures shows the implemented solar power technology in FIU campus, including the four major components of the PV systems. The produced power from the PV system can be used for lights. The number of the lights depend on the size of the solar bus stops. A display. There are a real-time sign which shows the remaining time till the next bus arrives. Delay can be also announced in display. The speakers can be powered by the PV systems. A speaker usually used for people with the visual impairments. The Wi-Fi, we can provide the opportunity to people to have the access to free Wi-Fi with getting the power from the sun. And also the sensor. Sensor can detect if there is anyone nearby so that the lights are turned on when someone is waiting the bus, and then we can save a lot of energy. The sockets. In the summer months, it could be possible to use the extra electricity by using the sockets to make it possible to change, for example, the mobile phone, laptops, and other electrical instruments. These two pictures shows the two new solar power bus shelter on in Corona and San Francisco in California. But however, based on our review, all over the U.S., cities are installing the PV technology for bus stop and actually in the transportation services. As example, Delaware received $1.5 million for solar panel installations, such as Georgia, Illinois, and Washington. Actually, the main motivation for us, that was the main motivation for us to thinking about implementing the solar technology in Cuba. And okay, my teammate Elena continues the presentation.
Well, for this project, we decided to focus in Havana, given its demographics and the annual revenue that it generates through tourism. Havana is the most populated province, with roughly 2.1 million residents, followed by Santiago de Cuba. Annually, Havana receives over 2 million tourists, generating roughly $20 million in revenue. Given its importance as a center for economic development, we also think it is important that Havana sets the standard for public transportation around the country. However, the Ministry of Transportation has been facing many issues throughout decades: instability, insufficiency. The prominent lack of safety and the low quality of services are of major concern. Public buses in Havana operate Sunday to Sunday, 24 hours a day. Over 1 million travelers use the public buses on a daily basis, with waiting times ranging from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. The night service, popularly known as La Confronta, has waiting times of up to 2 hours and even more, as many buses are retired from the streets past midnight. The price per ride is 2 cents for the most commonly used, while the bus tour cost is approximately $4.45. This is equivalent to 125 Cuban pesos, or a week of work for the average Cuban citizen. So it's mostly affordable for tourists. The main routes are now serviced by the Metrobus, as the Camello has been actually retired and sent out to the western provinces, such as Santiago de Cuba and Guantánamo. There are 17 main routes labeled P. They range from 1 to 16 with an extra route named PC. There's 103 other routes and secondary local routes C, in addition to the 3 routes serviced by the bus tour. This amounts to 3,030 bus stops around the city, and only 35% actually have a shelter. The proposed shelters by Sol Urbano seek to enhance visibility, not just for the drivers, but also for the passengers, increase safety, not simply at night, but also in case of a blackout. We also seek to promote renewable energy use throughout the city on a daily basis, and we wish to educate people on the positive impact that this has for society and the environment. We will now show you a very brief clip to help you visualize how Sol Urbano, by combining transportation, telecommunications, and renewable energy, will set Cuba worlds ahead.
Now, Itzaz will continue the presentation.
So in the methodology, first we wanted to estimate the cost. Definitely different quality means different cost. And we got our prices from the online sales like Amazon and contractors estimation. Then we go for bus stop selection. Then we chose a bus tour because it has more accessible information and definitely higher price won't significantly affect the tourist ridership. And you know, there are luxury, however, they don't have any bus stop, they are just a pole. And also we wanted to know that what's the effect of the having a good and new technology and advanced bus stop on the ridership of public transportation. So this is the proposed bus stop that we are going to speak about. It has three 45 watt solar panels, which provides which can provide 200 lumens per lamp, which able to provide 3 lamps. And we need to have a solar panel support frames and 3 2-watt lamps and 12-volt battery system and a wiring battery enclosure and solar 12-watt charger and controller. All in all, it costs $1,300 US dollars. And then for the route selection, we decided to choose the T1 route, Tour 1, because it has 2 main bus stops which has the intersect with other 2 ones. First one, Plaza de Revolución, and another one is Parque Central. And this is it's giving another interface of the city, and that green one is T1, Tour 1. So the main concern about all decision makers and authorities is to motivate people to use more public transportation and prevent using their private car. So definitely, with having a better facility and better quality of the facility of public transportation, people are more motivated to use public transportation. One of the benefits that we can discuss about it is the main benefit actually is having a light. And that's it. So it increases the security of people, especially women, especially children during the whole day. And another one is giving the people more information when the bus is coming, when is the next stop, and also a good attractive design of shelters will attract more travelers and have a positive impact of the island. Also, it presents the culture of Cuba, and the another benefit is having a advertisement. So it can be a very good source of money for the next bus stops. And it definitely can improve the culture of Cuban. Definitely know that, okay, it can be used by their house and it increase the culture. And so also we have some concern. Definitely the first concern is that vandalism. The vandalism is all over the world. However, we need to know that the solar panels may be damaged or stolen. Also, the seawater has salt. It may brought some problems for the efficiency of the solar panels. And also, the shipment to Cuba may have been challenging, and convincing the governments may be another issue. And then definitely we want to know that, okay, whatever that we said, we want to make it implementable. We need to have planning activities. That planning activities decide that who is going to take care of what, who is the project leader. And the first meeting, we are going to see that we are going to break down the project to different groups. Different people are assigned to different part of the project and establish a location which bus stop are going to be work on and formulate a survey and knowing the people's idea. And then the second meeting, the following up it and knowing the people's idea and finalize everything. So as a conclusion, I would like to say that this project is the first project, a novel project in bus stop, and using the smart public transportation in Havana, which has no one previously worked on the smart public transportation in Havana. And the solar panels and the current situation of Havana and the cost and selected bus stop were explained. Also, we talked about main benefits and planning activities. This is the first study on the smart public transportation in Havana, and any missing potential challenges are definitely undeniable. However, the first is better than the best. Thank you so much for your attention.
At
this time, we would like to open the room up for questions from the judges. Please make sure you use the microphone as you speak into it so that everybody can hear. So anybody can ask questions at this time.
First and foremost, congratulations. I have a couple of questions, actually. In your cost calculations, you say $1,300, but that doesn't cost the cover of the structure itself. You have not calculated that. That's very, very important, especially because you had to design something that is hurricane-proof. And also, you were talking about public transportation, but your project is geared only for tourists. Okay. Now, as far as perhaps there should be something that be more oriented towards the general public. They don't have that benefit. I wanted to ask you, when you calculate 600 lumens, do you think that that would be enough to power a station? And what type of lamps would you use? Because it seems if you use 3 lamps, that may not be LEDs.
Yeah, these are would be the LED lamps, which can provide based on the available solar power bus system in the U.S. And also we can calculate it in a software for calculating how much luminance we need for the area for a usual bus stops. And that's why we came up to the 60 watt, and we can cover with the 320 watt LED, which can, there is less power, but they can provide, a lot of, the lights and,
I was talking more about the 600 lumens. You want to also power some advertising panels, whether for political reasons or whatever. I don't think it's going to be very much commercial, but it's going to be some political reasons. But it's still 600 lumens. Do you think that's enough? Did you do the calculation?
I think we got that value from the available implemented project, and tested. That's what. But there is a way to calculate for there's a software. Is a software we can calculate for any specific area, because we need to know the area, specific bus stops, and area on that, and then maybe some of the bus stops nearby of that there are a lot of lights from the others, hotels and other things, and then there's no needs to have. But that one is designed based on that nothing in nearby of the solar bus stops, and I think the 60 watt with 3 lamps would definitely provide the enough light for bus stops.
Next question.
Again, it's very innovating what you're proposing. Looking at it, I'm pretty sure that going from your study to implementation, there's going to be some steps that will be required. The question I have, I see, and I'm looking at it, and my background is electrical, is that you could possibly look at, do you really need an inverter for the load that you're proposing, lights and so on? So there could be some opportunities that you could make that 1,300 be a little bit lower. Did you look at the route that you were doing for the shelter that you were proposing, that it fit the need of that route with the tourist projections and so on?
Let me explain the power side and then you can. Okay, actually, for that design, for that cost, we did not consider the inverter because we're just proposing the lights. But our design of the panels and the battery would be possible to cover all facilities. We can cover speakers, everything. But if we want to add the sockets, somebody wants to charge the mobiles, the laptops, we need to add the inverters to bring it to the AC, and then it's going to be usable for the people to charge the stuff, and it is the additional cost for that. But the thing we just thinking that the first important thing is the light, bringing the greater safety for that, and then also the good thing from our design is the battery and the panel would be enough for adding anything, okay? Because the battery that we selected is 500 amp per hours, which means if you charge, if you had the sun with 5 hours a day, it's gonna take for 4 days uninterrupted power, and that would be good. And then you can add it. If you add, maybe it's going to take 2 days, or 1 day based on the equipment. And there's no need to change the battery. We just need to take care of adding the additional thing. That's why we came up with that price. Otherwise, if you want to, we were able to also find, the better price for that, but we just find it to have, a frame, a very general cost, and then the additional option can be selected by the people as we propose a survey, because we don't want to, in that specific area, maybe a lot of teenagers like to have a Wi-Fi. Okay, Wi-Fi going to add. Or other area, the light is more important. Why should they spend the money for every station can have a different, feature and facility based on, the needs from the people, which we can get the data from a survey, and we propose in the planning activity. And for transportation side?
I would briefly like to address and go into your question. The reason why we selected the bus tour is we're thinking of proposing this to an investor. An investor wants to make sure that this is not only feasible, but also profitable. Only by generating revenue, not only will we be able to move on to public transportation so that others can actually enjoy it. The main goal, obviously, is to take it into the actual public transportation system. But if you don't have the revenue, and if you don't show an investor a feasible and profitable idea, it's not going to go anywhere. Off to your question. On the routes, the T1, it's very special because it has intersections. So yes, at the Plaza de la Revolución, it's a very open space. Okay, it's completely open. There's going to be no issues in terms of sunlight and charging. However, at Parque Central, we have some trees, we have some buildings, the theater is right in front, but it's such a centric location. The Capitol is right there. It's something that you would want to have there. It's going to attract more. You're going to make more money. You're going to get it back. So that was really the whole thought process behind the selection of the bus stops.
Good, thank you.
Good morning and congratulations. My alma mater. Thank you. And in transportation. So I have a question for you. You answered Dr. Golab's question before. Why did other cities, other DOTs around the state, why do they pursue getting money in grants for upgrading these shelters? In your research, did you reach a conclusion on that?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Definitely. In the United States, there are some states that they are working on it. As we mentioned some of the names, Washington, D.C., and California. Definitely California and Caltech is really advancing these issues. Not only bus stops and public transportation, but also other agents, like as we showed, FIU, is going to use these renewable energies. And they are working more and more on this. But it takes time to have some literature review to make it on the real world. And they are doing it as much as they can, not only just for the sake of the light, but also for the sake of the electricity, Wi-Fi, and everything else. We just wanted to show that this is a thing that's getting more and more popular in the United States. So definitely the next phase, if you want to have a better Cuba, that every single Cuban really deserves it, we need to go for these advanced technologies.
The reason I asked the question, and this is more of constructive, because I think that the theory, the idea is sound. And it's something that's happening all over the world, actually. When you put together your presentation, you got 15 minutes to tell us why you did it. You establish a purpose, you establish a need, you establish different ideas to meet that purpose and need, and then you conclude it. And in your presentation, there was questions, there was obvious things that were left out. In your written, you got to it, but not all the way there. So from a constructive standpoint, state it multiple times. It's all in your presentation. I kept circling it. It was just in different parts of it.
Yeah.
But congratulations. I think you wanted to.
Yes. I think that the whole idea behind renewable energy, other than having a positive impact on the environment, it is such a great investment that in the long run it's going to save you so much money. Fuels, it's something that everyone is moving towards because that is the future. The future is renewable energy, the future is solar powered. Not only the bus stops, they actually use it to power the traffic lights as well. There's so much that can be done, And I think again, it's the future.
I congratulate you because this project seems to be very interesting and very important. I know that you don't have in this small time to develop or to go in some details of the project, as my colleague told you. But I am concerned about the sizes decided to have the sample cost. In one of the photographs that you show, there is a very small station. But then later you show other sizes. Which one is the one that you select as your $1,300 station? That's one question. The second question is this. You know, you were concerned with the safety, let's put it that way, of the items placed in the sample. Lamps, electrical devices, and so on and so forth. It all depends on where they are located, how many are they, in what kind of buses, if it's just in the very expensive tourist transportation sites. But I would like to see if you can develop some answers to my two questions. Thank you.
Well, for the original idea, the pilot study, which would take place for the bus tour, I think the smaller ones will be okay. You know, tourists just come and go. There's not a pile of people lining up for the bus. So the smaller ones are, good. However, as we move on to the public transportation system, if we're going to set a bus stop on the P1, there's plenty of people there. There's over 30 people every morning waiting for the bus. So again, depending on the location, depending on the intersection, how many routes intersect there, we will be able to construct and give proper measures. The estimation that took place here was on the components. We left out the actual material, steel, concrete, because that's something that you can get for a lower cost in Cuba. You can get labor as well in Cuba, and you can actually make the Cuban people part of the whole project. That's what we were thinking.
Also, in presentation, we showed that all equipment in electrical side, the batteries, the controllers, and also the electrical and protection items gonna be inside the enclosures. And enclosure going to be also grounded, and also we can use it in based on the size of the stations, and also the size of the bus stop, how many power we want to provide. We're going to secure all the the electrical equipment by following the standards, the electrical standard that every company needs to follow, that safety, a lot of standards they're going to follow for that.
Yes. Good morning, and again, congratulations on providing this. I had a question where you said that 2.5 million people generate $20 million of revenue. That's $8 per person. I think maybe you left some zeros out on that 20 million.
Well, we collected that data actually straight from the Cuban National Statistics Association. We ignore how they collected the data, whether it was just solely based on hospitality or whether it was simply based on restaurants that they specifically choose. So we are confident that that is a lot. It's underestimated, but that's the data that we were able to obtain.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we'll have the team from the University of Florida, the University of Missouri, Team UMKC, presenting on permeable concrete and water storage management. Mr. Andrew Roberts, Andrew Ramsey, and Ryan Holmes, and their mentor is Mr. Leonard Barreras. I'll give you a 3-minute and then a 1-minute.
Good morning. I'm Andy Roberts with Team UMKC, University of Missouri, Kansas City. With me are my other members of the team, Ryan Holmes and AJ Ramsey. We'll be speaking today on our feasibility study of Baracoa as a potential sponge city. Sponge cities were pioneered in 2013 with the conceptualization by Chinese President Xi Jinping. And today, China continues to lead the investment in research and design of sponge cities for stormwater mitigation and water supply integration. Some of the benefits of the sponge city include stormwater integration and mitigation, groundwater recharge, mitigating urban heat island effect, creating a cooler pavement city as the city grows, and improving civil infrastructure, all entertaining the tenets of environmentally conscious design. The sponge city is achieved chiefly through a network of permeable pavements. AJ will now proceed to tell you what that technology entails.
Our proposal included permeable pavement or permeable concrete as the core infrastructure to our sponge city design. Permeable concrete is similar to conventional concrete, except it allows water to infiltrate into its pore structure. By removing sand and limiting the amount of cementitious material, permeable concrete typically has a void content of 20%. We can design roads, sidewalks, and parking lots using permeable concrete to mitigate and convey stormwater runoff. Now, here's where it gets interesting. As research is developing and permeable concrete is becoming more widely used, we're seeing how it is effective at removing pollutants from stormwater systems. In fact, Ryan Holmes and I have graduate research studies with the permeable concrete and the removal of heavy metals, arsenic, nitrates, and phosphates. Ryan recently published a peer-reviewed paper demonstrating how permeable concrete could remove 90% or greater of heavy metals through physiochemical processes like absorption. We would like to implement this technology in Baracoa, Cuba. Baracoa is a coastal city in eastern Cuba with an approximate population of 81,000 people. To our knowledge, water is collected through local river systems and only available at intermittent times during the day. It is then stored in individual storage tanks or cisterns on roofs. Inconsistent water supplies demonstrates the need to find a solution that supplies supplementary water to the citizens of Baracoa. Additionally, as storm events increase in intensity and frequency, stormwater mitigation techniques must be advanced. Unfortunately, we've seen the worst of this with the recent Hurricane Matthew that devastated many cities in this region just last October. Baracoa faced extreme damages due to this Category 4 storm with its high winds, intense rains, and storm surges. Despite this tragedy, it presents the opportunity to improve the existing infrastructure in Baracoa. We see Baracoa representative of the many other cities in Cuba, and we see the potential for this to be used as a pilot city for future sponge city designs. And here's where the methodology begins. We first needed to find the total volume of rainfall runoff that could be captured by a permeable pavement system. Using ArcGIS and shuttle radar topography, we were able to delineate a watershed and determine a 2.5 square kilometer drainage area into central Baracoa. With limited rainfall data for Baracoa, we used yearly average rainfall from Havana, Cuba of approximately 1,200 millimeters per year. This equated to approximately 100 millimeters per month with an average rainfall event 15 to 20 times out of the month. We use these average rainfall events to determine the total storage volume for daily usage. We also considered a 5-year and 100-year storm based on Miami, Florida data due to its proximity and similar geographical conditions. Considering these more intense events, we ensured that the permeable pavement system could convey this water, reducing flood events in Baracoa. By making assumptions to what percentage would come off of the drainage area into Baracoa, we could determine how much rainwater could be stored and mitigated with our permeable pavement system. I'll now hand it off to Ryan, who will discuss our area of interest and design in further detail.
Here we have the examples, or the central of the city, basically delineated into 8 different categories. At the center, there's the historic district, which is highlighted in red, and will remain largely undisturbed during the implementation of any sponge city design, as to preserve the historical qualities of the city. The rest of the city is highlighted in various colors of green and gray, going from dark green, which would be something like a permeable land, like grassy field or open lot, to something more like a parking lot, which is highlighted in dark gray. We have a total average area of approximately 1 square kilometer of impervious land in this area, and a total length of linear length of 26 kilometers, that being those highest priority roads and arterial lanes that would help be converted. And these are the targeted ones, for example, the one you see on the left. Here we have an example of the design. Basic pervious concrete design is approximately 6 inches of pervious concrete, followed by a subbase of 6 to 12 inches of aggregate that goes into an underdrain. This underdrain will then channelize the water into the groundwater, especially for the initial flow event, initial rain event, and then the rest of the water would then go into a local cistern. We would need approximately 38,000 liters of total cistern volume to supply 30,000 people with approximately 190 liters per day. The additional water, if in the case of like a 5 or 100-year storm, would then be channelized to either rivers or into the ocean. Here we have a preliminary cost evaluation. So these are based off the most recent values of United States cost analysis, and it entails approximately $30 million for the project. This is divided into primarily 2 sections. 2/3 of that is in the materials and construction costs, the other third in the pipes, cisterns, and maintenance. Here on our left, we show that there's a truck that would be used as a sort of a vacuum cleaner to preserve the quality of the pavement over the lifespan of the installation, which is approximately 20 or 30 years. The cost overall, it may be very large, but to compare it to existing systems, we're providing 2 things. One, we have infrastructure. 2, we're also cleaning the water. Cleaning costs are typically, for something like activated carbon, are approximately 25 cents for every gallon treated. Our system provides it for almost 2/10 of a penny for 1 gallon of treated water, which is significantly less. As we look forward into the next steps and into implementation and what that will entail, we'll need to further evaluate the storm surge events, such as how salinization will affect the system, as well as will there need to be any flushing of the permeable pavement. Additionally, we'll need to look at what happens as those water levels rise. Will there be detriment to the outflow? Additionally, we'll need to evaluate more in-depth analysis of the material costs and evaluate if we can reduce the cost overall by trying to integrate it with the existing infrastructure, such as the cisterns on the tops of the homes or any additional or any pipe system currently available. Lastly, we'll need to evaluate the water quality to look at, first of all, what is the existing water quality, and then to look at how this will improve it, as our research is showing that this is potentially drinkable water. So we want to see about the serviceability and serviceability limits. Similarly, there's going to be the ability to take that water into the groundwater and push back the saltwater intrusion, which is obviously a problem on the coast. we'll be interested in investigating how we can preserve that, and that is part of the water quality measures that we'll need to investigate. In conclusion, Baracoa provides us a great opportunity for reconstruction. It gives us an excellent place for pilots, as a pilot city, to demonstrate the capacity for sponge cities as a way to mitigate flood events as well as preserve the land, provide clean water and water storage, and also give it infrastructure such that it's both environmentally friendly and beneficial to the people.
That concludes our presentation on Baracoa, Cuba as a potential sponge city. We'd like to acknowledge several people, specifically Leonard Barrera, our team mentor. Also Delita Teresa Pupo Berrios. She's a local Cuban native living in Kansas City that we located early on when we were looking for a mentor. Her grandfather actually is a former professor of chemistry in Baracoa, so we got to go over and sip Cuban coffee, and we enjoyed that. We'd like to thank Dr. John Kevin for being our faculty team advisor down there at UMKC. We'd like to thank the School of Engineering and Computing and the School of Graduate Studies that made in part our travel and presentation here possible today. And lastly, we'd like to thank the Cuban-American Association of Civil Engineers, as well as the Association of Cuban-American Engineers for making this possible. We're honored and grateful.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take questions from the judges, and then anybody else will open it for the floor.
You brought back memories because I lived close by, and Baracoa is surrounded by mountains, and the rural areas in Cuba were basically from rivers, as you mentioned, but also from groundwater. Although Baracoa being in mountains, that would not have been feasible. But the question I have, not being civil engineer, is how significant is the maintenance of that permeable concrete, and how often you have to do it, what kind of equipment will be required to maintain that ability for potable water?
Certainly. There will need to be regular maintenance, approximately at least at a minimum, two times a year, using that vacuum. It's essentially a vacuum truck that vibrates the ground and sucks up anything that should filter into the surface. That a lot of the material and particulate matter, such as soil or even just dust off of trucks, generally tends to stay on the top half-inch of the concrete, of the permeable concrete. So those pores just need to be sucked out and cleaned biannually.
Okay, thank you very much.
I gotta congratulate you. I think this was the purpose of this infrastructure challenge. You took an idea, you took a need, you combined it, you looked at sustainability, and you addressed it very clearly, so I applaud you. A question for you. Did you guys ever consider, because you're looking at the infrastructure replacement, the roadways, from my perspective, did you ever consider using asphalt, flexible concrete pavement as a potential solution?
Absolutely. So as I was saying earlier, Ryan and I specialize in permeable concrete. So when you saw on those slides, it's just the concrete and the aggregate. We're finding that the main, and he's published a paper on this, so I can say some things. I don't know how much I can say. But we're finding that the cement is the magic ingredient that is cleansing the water through those chemical processes such as absorption. There's papers out there for porous pavements like asphalt and permeable pavers and impervious concrete. And a lot of that has to do with a permeable pavement system, so the aggregates and everything in there. So that being said, we're finding that the permeable concrete is kind of the magic key here. We did consider permeable pavers for maybe the historic district. Our understanding is that they might have some cobble type pavers in there, so we could do an option where we had permeable pavers on top and then pervious concrete underneath of that to kind of get the water cleansing thing, and then an aggregate subbase.
I think that you did a very good job. This system of filtrating water, you know, is very, very important, and it have a lot of creativity. But in the case of the amount of water coming from the sea or from the rivers, has to be, you know, studied much, you know, separately. The amount of water, the rainfall of that area, I mean, I was asking who was the one advising you in this respect, because close to that area is the highest rainfall in Cuba. Moa and Toa are rivers that are not there but close to. And if you see any kind of hydrography map, you can see how much rain. So it's about twice or three times the amount of water in Havana. So the extrapolation of Havana, I didn't like it because it is not, you know, usable. The second place is when you list all items that you can filtrate, you mention nitrates. Why you mention nitrates, I don't know, because there are not many or big farms in that area. I mean, you have to see the basins, you have to see where they are located, and according to that, you know, see that kind of thing. The other thing is, if they have been using fertilizer in more than 20 years, why to mention nitrates? I mean, so this is something important, you know, that is collateral. It's not the main, you know, aim of this project, but it completes the project. So I really, you know, these are my two types of questions.
That's a fair concern with the precipitation of Baracoa. We worked to the best of our ability using some of the resources we had. As far as the nitrates, we use that as an ability just to round out how it's effective for several different applications of cleaning. The great thing about the implementation of this is that it's potentially modular. This is the $33 million deployment. It obviously could be deployed at a smaller scale, and it can be built up as the city grows.
Also, I wanted to mention that the flow rate on this pervious concrete is significantly higher than any flow rate that you'll see in a rainstorm. So, for example, let's say the storm event was at above, at triple that value. We're talking about the pervious concrete can infiltrate approximately, at a minimum, 3 centimeters per second. So you would have to exceed a significant amount in order to, which obviously we would have to further investigate that, definitely.
Well, congratulations, a great idea, and I think that there would be many places in the world to put it. I'm not so sure it would be good in Baracoa or anywhere in Cuba. And the reason my concern is about the costs. When we're talking about infrastructure that will have to replace complete piping, and you have to dig tunnels, 1 meter diameter pipes, and all the collection items, and all those things will have to go to a water treatment plant, because you're not 100% sure that that water is 100% drinkable. And you cannot say, okay, well, it's going to be filtered completely, and people will drink it directly from there. Or you have to do some substations to put it there. So I don't think that $23 million is a reasonable number to put. Nevertheless, I think it's a great idea. Just a comment I want to second what Vladimir said. You cannot assume data from another place to Baracoa, neither Miami nor Havana. It doesn't matter whether in the same country or not. You have to be very, very careful. As an engineer, you really have to make sure that you have the right data, because if you have a wrong assumption, you get the wrong conclusion. So that's very important as you go progress in that. Still think it's a great idea.
Thank you. And I want to congratulate you. You know, water shortage existed in Cuba in the 50s, and it's obviously gotten a lot worse. Has this been done on any coastal cities? Because I love your looking forward, which you addressed here also on the report. What happens when you have a hurricane and you get saltwater infiltration? obviously, during most of the time, you're concerned with a runoff from the mountains. That's that big storm surges that you have, but how is the salinization handled?
That's the big question as far as pending research we need to understand. A lot of the research, as I said, is coming out of China. I have some of that research. It's in progress of being translated. As far as desalinization and the salinization aspect is, you can mitigate that risk through a number of mechanisms, staying away from kind of the surge whale, a certain amount of distance away from the shore. That's one aspect.
Additionally, there typically needs to be a cleansing period immediately after. For example, we would most likely install some sort of closure system on each of the cisterns or in the system to try and prevent any intrusion into your existing water. And that would be have to stay closed until that water had reached a certain level of salinity, which of course is allowable, but not to the same extent. Additionally, pervious concrete is showing some capacity, when designed appropriately, to remove salt water. So it would prevent such things as like gales or any inward winds, like will bring salt. Well, that may not be sufficient to overcome the ability of the concrete to actually remove that salt from just the rainwater or existing local water system.
Okay, again, congratulations.
At this time, we still have a couple more minutes, and we'd be more than happy to open it up to the audience if there's any questions from anybody in the room. Can we give the microphone to Mr. Medina?
Porous pavement was used in Germany about 30 years ago. The problem was the structural strength of the porous concrete. So only light vehicles, a heavy truck would crack the porous pavement. And we've gotten better over the years, but that was one issue.
Ryan can speak to this more specifically, but a big part of that is the temperature, the climate.
Essentially, carbonation and other things. The fact that the environment is so doesn't experience the freeze thaw that you'd normally experience in some place like Germany for deterioration of the concrete. Additionally, some of the roads that we're targeting for this implementation would be something like the side roads, not necessarily the main highway, partially because we don't want to destroy any existing infrastructure. We're more interested in improving the surrounding infrastructure. And additionally, you're right, the loading is definitely something we'd have to consider, and the design would have to be very much focused around what is available and what roads do people normally take to take their heavy trucks or semis.
Thank you.
Definitely.
All right, we're going to call it on this presentation, so thank you very much to the team from Missouri. Before we bring on the next team, I wanted to quickly run through the agenda. And so we'll have the University of Florida Gator Cooling, if you want to come up and start to set up your presentation. And right after that team presents, we'll go into a short break, make sure that everybody stretches and get a little bit of more coffee. And then we'll come back and have the final 3 presentations on the back end before lunch. I did want to make one comment, and maybe for those in the room who've not necessarily been part of the program in the past, one of the main things that we try, the basis of the CISC here, is to look at these projects specifically for a non-communist Cuba. So as we try to implement these projects, it would be specifically after a political different field. So as we look to change the methods and implement new infrastructure, the thought would be that the country in itself would certainly be more open to integrating some of these projects and roadways and the like. I did want to make a second comment that our viewers from the live casting are coming all the way down from Cuba themselves. And one of the comments that we just read was specifically, how are these infrastructure projects going to be done? And it's great to have Cubans outside of Cuba really looking at a solution for their current problems. So there's some other crazy stuff that they're saying, but it's certainly nice to hear from them in El Diario de Cuba. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome the University of Florida team, Gator Cooling. Their team is represented by Mr. Ryan Miller, Carl Guru, Louis Chong, and Diego Hitch, with their mentor, their industry mentor, Ms. Maggie Giraldo. They will be presenting on evaporative cooling containers for agriculture transportation. So, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys for coming out and listening to all these different presentations. We are the Gator Cooling team. I'm Luis. This is Ryan, Carl, and Diego.
Food waste is a major problem in both developed and developing countries throughout the world. Currently, 50% of the food being produced is wasted, which equates to $1 trillion per year. According to the FAO, or Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, 49% of produce is lost during transportation in Latin American countries. Fruits and vegetables are wasted more than any other food product. Cuba is currently utilizing 58% of its land for agriculture, yet 70 to 80% of its consumable produce is still being imported.
Our design attempts to improve Cuban infrastructure by utilizing a shipping container that uses both convective and evaporative cooling, as well as a solar radiation protection, in order to decrease shipping temperatures and maintain a more constant shipping environment for produce. Our design reduces temperature, which decreases microbial activity, as well as reducing ethylene production and reducing respiration, which decreases food spoilage. So a little background information on Cuba. There's currently 11 million people, according to the most recent census, living in Cuba, with an average annual temperature of 21 to 27 degrees Celsius and an average annual high temperature of 26 to 32 degrees Celsius. According to the FAO, one of the most recent studies, an ideal transportation temperature for most produce is between 13 to 15 degrees Celsius. On this picture right here, we can see how the plantains are uncovered and exposed to solar radiation. This causing problems during transportation. So in order to provide the best design possible, we came up with the following objectives. We wanted to maintain a shipping temperature of 18 to 20 degrees Celsius within the container. Although this is not within the range that Diego just stated of 13 to 15 degrees Celsius, a 10-degree drop in temperature usually yields to about a 2 to 3-fold decrease in food spoilage. Secondly, we wanted to decrease the total amount of food spoiled by about 10%. Finally, we wanted to maintain the cost of this container under $1,000 in order for it to be more easily implemented by Cuban farmers.
Our design will reduce the amount of produce lost during transportation, will increase the value and quality of produce, and will increase profits being made by farmers. Ultimately, this design is going to lead to a reduced need for importation of fresh produce within Cuba. The values highlighted are showing the amount of money that can be saved per ton of produce. These are in US dollars, but are in relation to the costs actually found in Cuba, not the United States. Assuming that the average flatbed truck is capable of holding 10 tons of produce, this means farmers are going to be able to save $200 to $3,000 per trip. Our design had 4 engineering principles, 3 related to temperature reduction and 1 related to pathogen reduction. Solar radiation protection, evaporative cooling, and convective cooling will all help to cool down the produce, while chlorinated water will be used in a fine mist water spray to reduce the amount of pathogens found on the produce itself. Solar radiation is a key source of heat resulting from the sun's rays hitting the produce. It is known that 950 watts per meter squared of solar radiation can affect produce during transportation. Current methods being utilized in Cuba are not accounting for this. By utilizing our design, which covers the produce, and painting the exterior of the container white, this 950 watts per meter squared will nearly be eliminated from becoming an issue.
Evaporative cooling is what makes our design unique and helps reduce temperature even further. The annual wet bulb temperature of Cuba is 25 degrees Celsius, and this can be reached through evaporative cooling alone. A water tank that's attached to the side of our container will hold up to 198 liters of water, and this essentially means that it can go in transportation for up to 6 hours of water being dispersed into the fine mist spray. The way it works, the incoming hot air will come in contact with the fine mist spray and then cause an evaporative effect inside of the container, decreasing the air temperature inside and cooling the products altogether. It's similar to when your body sweats and there's water droplets in your body. The water droplets evaporate the outside air and cools out the contact of the skin. This is the convective cooling effect that will occur as the incoming air comes through and over the produce. The incoming air will go through the air deflector and cause a convective cooling effect inside, cooling the produce, and an extractor fan will then remove the excess air. Whenever produce respirate, they actually emit heat also, and the respirator or the fan will help extract that to cool the inside of the container as well.
So one of the final ways that we wanted to reduce pathogen buildup was by implementing chlorine into our water. So we wanted to dope the water with chlorine, so when it's misting over the produce, it'll be able to kill pathogens. According to the FAO, if we were to keep the chlorine concentration between 50 to 75 parts per million, this would be suffice to kill any buildup and maintain our container clean as well.
In order to select the best design possible from our original models, we came up with an equivalent systems equation where we take the parameters of both price, effectiveness, and the time to build the container. And we came up with the final design here, which is one long scoop that covers about 90% of the total surface area of the top, because it received the lowest score from our equation and weighing factors. Basically, as Luis and Diego stated earlier, this is a small model of how the container would work.
Sorry.
This is basically a model of how the container would work. Air would come in through the front scoop while the truck is in motion, and it will direct the air on top of the produce, thus reducing the heat within the container. While the truck is stopped, however, there is no ram air going in through the deflector. Therefore, we implemented this fan that simulates the movement of the truck, thus allowing further convective cooling due to the sprinkler system that would be in the front of the scoop, as well as the convective cooling on top of the produce inside and out the back through the slits on the fan.
In our testing, we had the fan to be programmed at a 25 degrees Celsius measurement to be turned on. This does not necessarily have to be used, but it was used to improve our test readings. After our testing, we were able to determine that our objectives were met and the internal temperature of the container was able to be decreased by 6 to 8 degrees Celsius. It began at 28 degrees Celsius from a temperature control room because that resembles the relative humidity temperature in Cuba, and then it was able to be decreased to 20 to 23 degrees Celsius after our testing. The fan was actually able to keep the temperature lower than 25 degrees Celsius throughout the entire testing parameter, so it shows that it was an effective method of testing.
So we have estimated that our design will cost about $860 to implement. This can be compared to a refrigeration trailer, which would cost about $14,000, or a refrigeration truck, which would cost about $60,000. Our design is a lot more cost effective and can be easily implemented and can easily cover its cost of build and implementation within 1 to 2 trips, depending on the produce that's being transported.
When edible food is wasted, more must be produced. This means more water must be used, more energy must be used, and more fertilizers must be used. According to the FAO, 65% of the water being used in Cuba is going towards agriculture. 7.5 million gallons of petroleum fuel are used each day, according to International Energy Statistics. By wasting more food, agriculture is also intensified. This means more land is cleared and more fertilizers are used. Cuba is currently utilizing 179,000 tons of nutrients in nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash fertilizers each year, according to the FAO. In addition, Cuba's agriculture alone produces 11.6 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions each year. By utilizing our design and reducing food waste, Cuba will use less water, will reduce its energy impacts, and become a more sustainable country with a more sustainable agriculture system.
So that concludes our presentation. At this moment, we'd like to acknowledge Dr. William Pelletier, Dr. Richard Schultz, Dr. Eric McElmore, Dr. Ray Buckland, and ACAE for giving us this opportunity to present our design. And we'll take questions now.
Congratulations, really great presentation and great innovative application of technology. The Spaniards used to have this piece of leather they would put in water and just put it on the window as they were driving, and so they have cool wine to drink. I don't know how they did the driving, but anyways, it was very good. So it's the same principle. By the way, I used it myself when I was bicycling. My question is, you have $858 for a box. That has to withstand movements and everything. May I suggest that you use, for example, a standard 20-foot container used for transportation is 8 by 8 by 20. You can get them really cheap because they're discarded in many ways. You can make a modification, and that will be structurally sound to be trucked, and you will have enough things there. Anyways, that was a commentary.
The reason we use our dimensions was because that's the average dimension of a flatbed, so we wanted it to be mounted on flatbeds.
Yeah, but in that case, you will have to make sure that this structurally sound
Yes.
for movement. You won't get it for $858.
Yes.
My compliments for the name of your team, although I'm an Ibis follower, not a Gator follower. But I do have a number of questions, but because of time, let me say this. You showed a picture which brought back memories to me of the plantains being transported. And it's amazing that that's still happening that way. One thing that I didn't see a lot of work is the fact that different products will require different amounts of labor to store it from the area that you're concentrating, which is from the source of the products to the retail development. And did you look at like the difference between transporting tomatoes or mangoes versus plantains and the work that it will take to store? I would think from being outside, plantains, it's less laborious to pack it than tomatoes or mangoes to have that product.
Yes, so overall, in terms of the work, we weren't too focusing on that. We were focusing more on the value of each. So in terms that should relate to the work is those products are going to be more valuable. And so by using the container and actually being able to transport more of them, you're going to get that value out of putting the more work in there, as opposed to currently now losing about 49% of those produce that you put work into during transporting them.
In addition to answer that question, we also took into consideration the way you're supposed to pack the produce inside the container, because different packing methods result in different convection currents through the container, and such different produce requires certain ways to be packed and managed so it doesn't spoil, doesn't hit, it doesn't bruise. So we took all that into consideration, and I believe it's within the manuscript. We just don't have a demonstration right here of like a RPC container in order to place it inside there to show how it actually works.
Thank
you. Congratulations on the idea. But I have my very serious doubts on the workability of this. What he was talking about in Spain is in a very dry country. I'm an air conditioning engineer. For example, you go to a place like Arizona, New Mexico, that's very dry. People use evaporative cooling for air conditioning. You come to a place like Florida, which the humidity is similar to what you have in Cuba, they don't work. Okay? For example, a cooling tower, which is water being sprayed on top of a thing with giant fan pulling bunches of air, the most you get are 12 degrees Fahrenheit of cooling, which is, what is it? Almost half of that in centigrade. So I just don't see an evaporative system being able to function in a humid climate such as Cuba. And my other concern is how you're going to get the air to flow into the inner part of the container. Obviously, on the perimeter, if this evaporation, I don't know how you calculated how much cooling you were going to get. Obviously, where you have the perimeter, where you have a lot of airflow when the truck is moving, you would get a certain amount of evaporation. But in the middle of the truck, in the middle of the box, how are you going to get good airflow in there?
So in terms of for the evaporation, as you were mentioning, about 12 degrees Celsius you could expect for decreasing, or Fahrenheit. But in terms of our testing, we did account for the humidity, so the humidity was increased in that room as well. And in addition, the convective cooling and the radiation protection will decrease the temperature further. And as mentioned, a 2 to 3 decrease in spoilage will result just in 10 degrees Celsius. So even if we can't get to that 13 to 15, which is your optimal temperature for the produce, as long as you get that 10 degrees Celsius, you're going to see a huge difference in the amount of spoilage.
And secondly, in order for the air to go into the container, we took into consideration that the air would have to go in through the scoop, and that's where we have the model, the airflow model earlier, that shows that air does go in through the container. It's not in the same velocity as what the truck is going at. However, air does flow through the model, and it does cool down with the fine mist spray.
I congratulate you because this is a very innovative way of cooling any products. This has been used also in dairy cattle, and it has been a success. So it's just an improvement of whatever environment you will find in any season of the year. So, thank you.
Yes, that's where we actually got the idea from. I work at the dairy farm at the University of Florida, and they have evaporative coolers everywhere. So.
Congratulations.
Great. At this time, we can open the floor for one short question from the audience or commentary. If not, we have a question back there. Can you get the microphone? Or somebody can take it. While we get the microphone to Mr. Teo, we have several commentary from our online forum, and I can translate this a little bit for you guys. It's a Spanish. One of the main comments, it says, una excelente idea, congregarse para exponer iniciativas relacionadas a la infraestructura de Cuba. Es importante acudir a la reparación total de la nación lo antes posible. Es crucial. So basically, you have an excellent idea, and it's certainly important to be doing this, what we're doing here today for Cuba, and being able to start collaborating some of the ideas that can be positioned later into a better place so that we can integrate them as this government changes. But Mr. Deo?
Thank you. I congratulate you with the idea. This is very unique. What I was concerned with is the crating of the produce. Let's say that you have tomatoes, which will be very easily to spoil. Then you have to have special crates made so that would allow the flow of the air to go through as well as the entire container. And that way it will keep the produce fresh. Is this part of the model that you folks worked on?
We didn't have access to how if there's any exact crating methods already being used in Cuba. The only information we have is basically what our picture showed of the mass stacking. However, we do know that RPCs would be, our reusable plastic containers would probably be the best way in order to form a structure within the container that allows the best airflow. We do have a bit of help from our advisor, Dr. William Pelletier, that shows the best structuring inside, the best stacking form for tomatoes. Those are probably the most delicate, the most delicate to use. And you essentially have to educate the farmers on how to properly do it, rather than just tossing everything. You'd have to go in in a certain pattern in order to create the best airflow possible.
I would recommend for you to consider that you're starting from zero. Whatever they're doing there, it's not what you want to. So you have to consider, I will tell them, this is the way that you have to create this thing. This is the way that you have to pack the container so that you optimize the product.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, like we mentioned, we'll take a 15 to 20-minute break. We will reconvene back here at 10:55 to get the show up and going. For those of you watching online, we will come back here at 10:55 with the next 3 presentations. Thank you. Good morning. I would like to welcome everybody back to the 2017 Cuba Infrastructure Scholarship Competition. I would like to remind everyone again that this is being broadcasted live at El Diario de Cuba, and we very much welcome every commentary or questions to the teams and or to the association. We're more than happy to comment on those here in between the groups. And but at this time, we will proceed with the 4th team, and this team is coming from Florida Institute of Technology, MWED, Magnetic Wave Energy System Device. They will be presenting on the self-sustainable magnetic wave energy device. The teams are composed of Mr. Erwin Horvath, Abraham Butla, Julie McCarthy, and Alex Ortiz. Their industry and faculty member is Dr. Elena Solo Gabriel, and at this time they will start on their presentations. Thank you.
Good morning. In 1492, Cristobal Colon sailed the ocean blue. Now, we all know how that story goes, especially if we're from this side of the world. However, not many of you know what happened 5 months prior to that. Spain had just gotten out of several hundred-year war, and the infrastructure was not up to par with some of the European neighbors at the time. And they still took the liberty of investing 3 ships across to the unknown. Now, I compare this to Cuba's situation in the sense that the nation is coming out of a very complex history. Their infrastructure is not up to par to where they desire to be. And based on where we are here today, I take pride in saying that the initial steps have been being made to make Cuba a much brighter future. Now, for those of you that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting today, my name is Alexander Ortiz.
My name is Erwin Horvath.
And my name is Ibrahim Bootwala. We are 4 undergraduate ocean engineering students from Florida Institute of Technology. Unfortunately, we are missing one of our team members today, Julie McCarthy, who made tremendous contribution towards this project. We would also like to thank Dr. Stephen Wood, our department head of ocean engineering, for his determined support, and Dr. Solo Gabriela for her continuous guidance throughout this competition.
Okay, to start with a brief mission statement. Our goal is to help make our species independent from the reliance of fossil fuels. What we plan to do is by implementing the reliable, clean source of energy for not only the government agencies, but for the consumer market as well. So now, before we can incorporate our strategies to Cuba's energy infrastructure, we had to do a little research on the country. So the island nation of Cuba has roughly 11 million people, and for the growth of the population, we can expect the energy demand to increase along with it. Now, Cuba is heavily reliant on foreign oil, as with many countries nowadays. And in 2015, Raul Garcia Barrero, a senior official from Cuba's energy ministry, made it clear that it's getting off foreign oil a high priority to the nation. The Cuban government also plans that by 2030, sustaining 24% of the country's energy needs solely on renewable resources. Now, this sum is pretty large, and the MWED team would like to contribute to the Cuba's goal by implementing the feasibility and simplicity of our senior design device to offset the cost of dependence on oil.
So what is MWED? MWED stands for Magnetic Wave Energy Device. It utilizes the concept of Faraday's induction, and basically Faraday's induction is when a magnet oscillates through a coil producing EMF. EMF stands for electromagnetic force. So as you can see in the image here, we have 3 magnets. We also have a small scale model on the judge's table. We have 3 magnets. The first one is fixed, the second one is moving, and the third one is fixed as well. The middle one is connected to this shaft. So as it oscillates through this magnet, it produces some EMF, and due to the repulsion forces, because it's in an antipolar formation, it goes in the other direction and it constantly oscillates back and forth. So the kinetic energy from the wave exerts a force upon the plate and causes this device to oscillate. We can do the same thing in a vertical orientation. So analysis, here are some examples of what we decided to do with our device. Initially, we decided to 3D model to make sure that it is in fact buildable. We also ran CFD, which stands for computational fluid dynamics, in order to determine the drag coefficients on the plate. And finally, we ran structural analysis to determine any stress points and strains on our device. The most significant analysis that we've done is magnetic analysis. So in the image here, the blue area represents as the magnet surpasses the coil and it produces some voltage. That voltage, according to a software that we use, which is called FEMM, it stands for Finite Element Method Magnetics, showed that in one oscillation we can produce 110 millivolts. If we assume that this device can oscillate 1,000 times per day, it would generate about 110,000 millivolts. If you convert that, it is 110 volts. Utilizing Kirchhoff's power law, we take the 110 volts, we receive 3 amps from the software, and we get 330 watts per device, which is approximately 0.33 kilowatts, or in other words, 7.92 kilowatt hours per day. In 1 month, its efficiency is 237 kilowatt hours per month. To put things into perspective, the average household in the US utilizes approximately 908 kilowatt hours. We can achieve this value with 4 devices. Due to the harsh environments of the ocean, we chose aluminum 5083, which is a marine grade series alloy with high strength. The table shows the percent compositions of different elements in the aluminum alloy. Corrosion is a problematic factor when building ocean-based devices. To counteract bimetallic corrosion, we will sleeve our copper coil. We will also sleeve any screws that will mount the device to any surface. And in order to ensure longevity of our device, we'll be applying something called an anti-fouling paint to prevent biofouling. Biofouling is the growth of microorganisms such as tube worms and barnacles, anything that's placed in the water, so on hulls of ships and such. So welding itself introduces a lot of stress points in our device. We decided to pressure cast. On the image on your left, you see something called crack propagation. And due to the ocean, waves exert forces in the X, Y, and Z direction. So to be on the safe side, we decided to pressure cast. On the image on your right, you can see how pressure casting is done. Basically, you make a mold of your device, you place your molten metal into the container, it goes through the refractory tubes, and your device is created, and then cooled. Simplicity was also a very important factor of our device. You can see that we have a 6-piece assembly. The initial piece is the shaft shell, where the top magnet goes into it and it's fixed at the top. The bottom seal goes onto the threaded shaft here. Then the bottom magnet gets placed on top of the bottom seal, which goes onto the threaded shaft. The middle magnet is then threaded to the shaft, and all of this is put together to give you the device that you saw earlier and the device that is on the judge's table. So this is our bill of materials. This takes into consideration current market prices of aluminum 5083, copper, as well as casting services. The casting services were determined from various companies throughout the state of Florida, and one device costs about $3,500 to produce. So earlier in the magnetic analysis, we said that we need 4 devices in order to produce the same as a US average household. So it would cost approximately $14,000. According to FPNL, in the US, we paid 12 cents per kilowatt hour. So in about 10 years, that costs about $13,000 to $14,000. So your return on investment for 4 devices would be about 10 years. And this is our Gantt chart. This just shows the progress that we've made in our research. Currently, we're at week 31, 32. So you can see that we've gone through all of these sections, including our abstract 3D modeling. We will always continuously run analysis to make sure that we achieve the best efficiency. And we will soon be entering phase 3, which includes construction and assembly.
The two pictures, as you can see, the two pictures, they represent the wave characteristics of the Caribbean region. The first picture represents the currents that flow through this region, that are the Gulf Stream, the Mexican current, and the Louisiana current. These currents, they help to establish the wave direction. So the picture 2 represents the wave direction, and the arrow represents the wave direction. So the wave flows from the northeast direction with an average height of 5 feet, and it goes towards the southwest and the northwest regions. But the northwest region has this swell, which is caused generally due to the storm and the hurricanes, which increases the wave height of approximately 9 feet. These waves, particularly, they generate big waves, and these big waves are not necessary for our device, as our device requires small waves and oscillations which moves the shaft easily due to the force caused by the magnetic field. The northeast region also has the swell, but the swells are reduced due to the Bahamian Islands, which reduces the wave height to approximately 5 feet, which is suitable for our device. In the northeast region, our device can be installed at Varadero, Puerto Padre, and Baracoa regions. This is a seawall where our device will be mounted horizontally. As the wave hits the plate, the magnet attached to the shaft will oscillate between the two antipolar magnets and will generate some energy. This is a seawall in the Puerto Padre region where a device will be mounted in a horizontal direction. Our device can also be mounted just below the dock in a vertical direction where the waves would hit the plate and the plate will go down and the magnet would oscillate between the two antipolar magnets. This is a dock, sea dock in the Hotel Brises, where a device will be mounted just vertically below this walking dock, and the hotel. Just below that, we can also attach a device. And
so some of our other accomplishments that we've done is we worked with the NASA JPL Sustainability and Environmentally Friendly Conference at Pasadena this last year. And some future outlooks is that we also plan to attend the conference in the Netherlands. It's coming up. These are our references, and thank you. Can I ask any questions?
You're working in my field, and basic questions is that what type of voltage and frequency you expect with your device to put out, not just the power, but the wave and the frequency, because I presume you're talking about alternating type rather than a direct current voltage.
Yes, that's correct. Our device is an alternating current. As far as frequency in hertz, we didn't actually get a value for that from the software that we ran magnetic analysis on, but each oscillation produces about 110 millivolts. So every time the magnet surpasses the copper coil, it produces some positive EMF. Then when it deflects down, it produces negative EMF. So our goal is to implement some type of a power inverter. That way we only harness the positive EMF.
So essentially, you will need to have some products that will take the power from this device and convert it to a power that can be utilized by the users.
Correct.
Okay. The other question that I have is that I would presume in the coastal areas that you have a tide fluctuations, so the mounting of those facilities, whether vertical or whether horizontal, will require some adjustment to maintain them within the peak location that the wave will generate the maximum travel. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So did you look at some type of adjustment for the mounting of the facility?
Yes. So when we are entering phase 3, we're actually going to construct a device out of the aluminum 5083, and our goal is to implement some type of a microcontroller, such as an Arduino, in order to extend the shaft if necessary due to tidal changes. But that's a little bit ahead of us, so we're still in phase 2.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
I'm coming back to my typical question about costs. Sorry. Well, one comment about engineering. You will have to, besides casting, you will have to do some treatment for strength. So casting alone will give you almost an isotropic material. You need to have some strength, so you may have to template or do something with it. But anyway, my question regarding cost is, the device itself beautiful, but I have seen these things in large scales also. How are you going to harvest the energy? You need to have cost for distribution. The seawall cost are not included. You have envisioned this as an individual, like a household device, that somebody will have their own thing and see, well, okay, I'm going to go and connect my own thing there? Or you think there's going to be more for community, like a city will install that in a large scale, so that will be implemented? I think it's a great solution, by the way, in coastal towns. Also, storage, batteries, inverters, all those procedures. This on itself could be a method of generating electricity, so it's not an individual thing. But your costs are looked at how much it costs to make a small thing. You need to look at this in industrial strength, because to build a seawall is a very expensive project. You're not going to get $3,500, maybe a few $1 million. But in itself is a great solution. So I don't know if you have considered this in a large scale, or why did you dismiss, for example, the seawall cost or the electricity cost, the distribution cost and things like that?
Sure. So we did take in consideration both factors. Our initial approach was that we were going to implement this device on already existing seawalls. Our original idea had this to serve in individual households, such as ones that own boats on the sides, whatnot here in the States. But we found that was a little bit rare in Cuba. So this would do good on, say, coastal communities such as the places that we listed above. And the price, well, that will probably be for a specific niche of people that live in Cuba for, I guess, what they make annually, and probably for smaller companies that want to increase their revenue and awareness on the community and the environment.
I think it would work great in a large scale. I'm not so sure it's going to work on a small scale like you propose, but in a large scale, beautiful.
Thank you.
I just really wanted to compliment you guys on a very innovative concept, and I think that's what this project is all about. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Just out of curiosity, because this is not my field, the dimension of the device, how did you guys determine it? Was that the optimal dimension to get the output you wanted, or does the size matter?
So initially when we thought about this device, we took into consideration what is the distance between the mean water level and underneath the dock. So it was approximately 1 meter. So our device is about 1 meter, 1 to 1.5 meter. But that's subject to change because depending on the applications, you would need to extend the size, make it longer, make it shorter. And that's why I mentioned the microcontroller. Maybe we can control that remotely.
If I can comment as well, that size also allows you for a greater mobility to the clientele. So say a hurricane were to come, this device is not built to withstand such hurricane forces. You can easily go out and take it out. It's just a one-man deal.
Great. At this time, we can open it up to questions from the audience. So we have a question back there. Can you come around and ask the question here for the microphone? Come up here.
Hello, great job, you guys. So I have a question regarding.
Can you come over here?
This is good? Okay. So you spoke about putting this in hotels near the coastal areas. So how will the rotation speed and energy affect the environment and organisms living in this water? And second question is, how will it affect the structural stability of the sea bar?
All right, so to talk about the environmental aspect, we are using an anti-fouling paint, and majority of those are non-toxic to the environment, or at least should be, and the ones that we are looking at are non-toxic to the environment. Besides sea life, when this device oscillates, waves are coming from every direction, so it produces this sloshing effect back and forth. I don't think that it'll be too hazardous for nearby sea life, and because microorganisms love to inhabit certain things, it could even produce more marine life, such as for reefs. So.
Any other questions?
Great presentation, congratulations. Yeah. I was wondering, what's the maximum wave height that the current device can withstand, and what is the return period for that wave height, if you evaluated that? So if a wave comes in that you can't remove the device in time, what is the maximum wave it can withstand?
The maximum wave height it can withstand is around 6 to 7 feet. Yeah.
And if you have to, you have a hurricane, then what's the procedure there?
The best thing about the device is that it can be detached easily, and you can detach everything and you can take it. And once the hurricane is over, you can again attach it back.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
I also wanted to mention the structural integrity of aluminum 5083. It's very strong. It's very susceptible to wave energy, waves itself. So it'll hold up in such harsh conditions. That's why we decided to go with that. And also it's a marine grade series alloy. So.
All right. Give it up for team from FIT. At this time, we'll move on to the next team from the University of Florida, Tim Cauto, and they will be presenting on biochar, sustainable water filtration for rural Cuba. This team is composed of Ms. Carolyn Capel, Margaret, Julia, and Sarah. Do you want to load up the presentation? And their mentor is Ms. Cristina Ortega.
Hello everyone, we are Team Cauto and our presentation is on biochar sustainable water filtration for rural Cuba. My name is Carlin Chappelle. I'm here with Julia Richter, Margaret Bello, and Sarah Wittig. We are engineering seniors in the biological department at UF.
So, our problem statement. Only 82% of rural areas in Cuba have access to drinkable water. This is due both to failing infrastructure and significant pollution to surface water sources. Current methods of purification are insufficient or cause more harm than good. Therefore, our goal is to produce a potable water from contaminated waste stream in a self-sustained way.
In order to create a long-term solution that is both effective and energy efficient, we have created 3 design objectives. The first of which is to make sure that all water filtered through our system has a turbidity of less than 5 NTU. Turbidity is the cloudiness of water due to particles and is a good measurement of how clean water is. And that 5 NTU is a World Health Organization standard for drinking water. Additionally, we would like the system to have a lifespan of 8 years. This is an estimate based on the degradation of the plastic used in the design. Finally, we want to use a sustainable power source. Much of the grid in Cuba is unreliable. We want to make sure that this system provides clean water 365 days out of the year. And to do that, we'll be using a solar-powered system.
In choosing a solution for this design, we looked at many different possibilities. We split contaminants in the water to 2 main categories, industrial and biological waste. Industrial waste contains heavy metals, pesticides, and factory runoff. The first solution we looked at was an electrodialysis system. However, this was too large and too expensive for home-scale use. We also looked into biosand. However, that requires a lot of upkeep, and ease of use was a priority. We ended up choosing biochar as our solution, and Carlin will discuss that later. For biological waste, that contains untreated wastewater and bacteria runoff. The first thing we considered was the lice straw. However, it's hard and expensive to scale up for an entire family's water source. We also looked at chlorine. However, that's been shown to be a carcinogen and actually shown to cause an increase in risk of miscarriages during pregnancy. We chose UVC light, which we'll also discuss later on.
So for the industrial contamination removal, we settled on biochar as our method. Biochar, actually we have a jar over there for the judges to look at. It's pyrolyzed biomass is made in a low oxygen environment. It's one of the byproducts that's made. And the amount of biochar that's made in relation to the gas and oil that's also made is dependent on the temperature in the feedstock. We intend for our design to use a sugarcane bagasse feedstock as it is a byproduct of the sugarcane production already occurring in Cuba, and from our research, we also saw that the government is currently trying to make biochar from this source already. Biochar has a high surface area and porosity, as you can see from our scaled picture there on the left. This allows for a high cation exchange capacity, which allows it to absorb a lot of the heavy metals and other contaminants that are in the water. On the right is a picture of what we ended up using for our testing, which was lump charcoal. We had trouble getting access to actual biochar, but this was a comparable material.
UVC light kills bacteria by disrupting the DNA and actually shutting down the reproduction habits as well as the any harmful effects of the bacteria. UVC light is a 200 to 280 nanometer range for the wavelength. And we ended up using LEDs in our design because they've been shown in multiple studies to be just as effective as the mercury bulb. However, they use less power, they have a longer lifespan, and produce less heat, which decreases the danger of our system for household use.
Therefore, our proposed solution is a small-scale water filtration device for household use only. This device will utilize a gravity filter using biochar to remove heavy metals and chemicals from water. This will be followed by a high-density polyethylene tube lined with UVC LEDs to kill all microbes and viruses. Finally, the water will be stored in a secondary barrel that will have a spigot for ease of use, and the entire system will be powered by solar panels. One of our primary materials is the locally sourced barrel used for housing the biochar column. We decided on locally sourced so that it will decrease our environmental impact and decrease the cost of our device. Another primary material is the high-density polyethylene tube that the HDPE was chosen for its specific properties that protect the user from the UV light emitted from the UVC LEDs and because of its durability. In addition, our system will be controlled with the Arduino Uno, which is an inexpensive microprocessor.
So for our design, we created a system to ensure that the water is actually being properly filtered. This is a visual schematic for the code that will be used to program the Arduino Uno. Once water has been added to the system, a button can be pressed on the side of the system. That will start the timer, turn on the UV lights, and begin measuring turbidity. If the turbidity readings are under the threshold, under the 5 NTU, and are clean to drink, a green LED will turn on. If it is over that threshold, a red LED will turn on and will signal that the water should not be consumed. The meter will continue to take readings once every 10 minutes for 2 hours. Once the timer is over, the LEDs will turn off and the sensor will cease taking readings. All of these components will be hooked up to a solar panel, which can be mounted in an area with access to sunlight.
So this is our full cost analysis breakdown for our final device. As you can see, this is the largest costs come from the UVC lights, as we want to make sure that there are enough to actually kill the bacteria properly, which came out to about $75. The solar panel was about $60, which was also more expensive, and in addition it needs a lithium-ion battery as well as a solar charger so that when we have days that aren't necessarily as sunny, there's still access to the clean water that they need. Last, the HDPE barrel for the final holding tank costs about $45. So overall, our cost analysis came out to about $360 US, which should be spread out of the cost should be spread out over about the 8-year lifespan that we intend for this device. And it does provide such an integral part of daily life, like you need water for living, so this cost seems low to us.
We had 2 phases of testing. For our early test, we had 2 different methods we used. We started with a PVC pipe, which we filled with charcoal, gravel, and sand. For our quantitative test, we measured the conductivity of different concentrations of salt water. We measured that before and after going through the device. We found that while the conductivity did decrease after filtration, it was inconsistent with the numbers we were expecting for proper drinking water. This is also true for the unspiked samples, our control, which led us to believe that it could be an error with the meter calibration. It is at this point that we looked to other methods of testing. Additionally, we performed a qualitative test. We took nutrient-rich brown-colored water and put it through our system and observed the color change, and we found that this water came out clear instead of brown.
We've also done some testing more recently since we've submitted the paper. We recently ran some tests on the UV lamp to confirm that it would kill the biological component. And we also ran spiked water samples that were spiked with KNO3 and lead acetate and ran through the charcoal column we proposed to test the ability of the biochar to remove the industrial contamination.
So these are some images from our testing. On the left, you can see where we were actually sieving the charcoal that we had to make sure that was a consistent size. We brought it down to the smallest size we could possibly get, which was 710 micrometers. And we wanted the smallest amount so that there was the highest surface area, higher contact time, more absorptive characteristics for the charcoal. We also used some larger charcoal media, same charcoal, just bigger pieces in the bottom. So the middle is our column that we used for testing. The top, it was about 2 feet high. It was a 3-inch diameter. The top foot was the very fine charcoal, and then the bottom foot was the larger size. It took about 2 hours to run through entirely, so that fit our programming where we wanted to make sure it was a 2-hour running time for the entire system. Last picture is our UV lamp testing that we did. This brought water through at 600 milliliters per minute, which we tested about 1 gallon in 6 minutes. And this is a much higher flow rate than we expect for our gravity-based filter. So we're confident that the contact time of the UVC light on the actual water to kill the bacteria will be absolutely sufficient.
On the left, you can see the results from our nitrate test. We spiked the water with KNO3, and on the top, you can see the pre-filtered sample results. We spiked the sample to 15 parts per million, and the test gave an accurate reading to what we expected. On the bottom, you can see that our post-filter results show 0 parts per million, which is definitely under the threshold of 10 parts per million, which is the EPA standard, which actually is lower than the World Health Organization standard. On the other side, you can see our lead sample. We ran spiked water that was spiked to a concentration of 30 parts per billion lead, which is twice the drinkable level. Post-filter, the test ran negative, meaning it was definitely under the 15 parts per billion, meaning that our water was drinkable. On the bottom, you can also see the E. coli test we ran on the UVC lights. So pre-treatment, you can see the yellow sample, which means it's positive. And after running through the filter, we got a purple result showing negative E. coli, meaning we successfully killed all the bacteria because it would have run positive.
In conclusion, the use of this device will increase access to drinking water in rural Cuba, greatly improving the quality of life of thousands of people, while not further polluting the environment.
There are also a few people we'd like to thank: our professors, Dr. Eric McLemore and Dr. Richard Schultz, our faculty advisor, Dr. Eben Bean, our mentor, Ms. Cristina Ortega, and Tiago Onofre, a grad student in electrical engineering that helped us with our electronics, and finally the ACAE for allowing us to present today. Thank you.
First and foremost, congratulations, great idea. But I want to also mention something. It's very, very refreshing to see women in engineering. We need more of you. I really applaud you. We need more, and hopefully in the next years we will have other judges and perhaps women being judges. There's nothing that will stop you from it. So hopefully you encourage your female friends to also join engineering. It's wonderful to see that. My question is regarding the filter. How often do you have to change that? Who will actually manufacture it and provide it? Is it something that could be done on a household basis, like, or there will have to be some type of distribution for it?
There are small-scale ways to do this. Actually, another team in our department is actually working on a small-scale model. We were expecting for it to be distributed through the government, honestly, because they were already doing some of this. And for the lifespan of the biochar, that was the only thing that wasn't like, that would be replaced. It was a 2-year lifespan for the properties.
We have some data we received from previous experimentation. However, the reason we wanted to include a turbidity sensor in the actual device was to be able to tell the user if the water was clean or not. So if they're going to get constant red results, they're going to know that they're going to need to change their biochar. So that would be some education that would have to be provided to them to know to watch out for. But we want to make sure that there's not going to be error where they think they're drinking clean water and they're actually drinking water that's, going to hurt them.
Maybe you should implement the solution for in the United States. I mean, Burrita should have something like this.
In Flint, Michigan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
I think my partner here alleged to maintenance cost what are we talking about? You had the cost of the initial $360. What is the maintenance that this device will require and how often?
So the $360 was enough for the device, as well as the UVC lights, which will last more than the 8-year lifespan for the device. The really only thing that would have to be replaced by the user is the biochar, and we're already expecting that to be locally sourced. Sugarcane's a big production in Cuba, and we think that, we know the government is looking into producing biochar for a lot of energy purposes. So we're hoping that it'll be readily accessible to the community.
We also thought that the UVC lights would be our biggest issue if there were maintenance costs. Like if a light went out, what would we do to replace it? And each of the lights was about $12 to $13. So we also had considered putting in a sensor to make sure that all the lights were working inside of the pipe. And I think that would be the only cost over the 8-year lifespan, so $12 each time.
In reading your material, at times you talked about a turbidity sensor and a conductivity sensor. Are we talking about the same animal or different?
So we started with conductivity from a suggestion from one of our mentors, and then since our conductivity sensor was not working the way we intended it to, and 2, we got another suggestion from a different mentor that the turbidity would be a better sensor, especially for the total suspended solids within the water. That would check for if the biochar is working properly, since it does filter out the actual particulates as well. We changed from the conductivity in our initial testing to implementing turbidity and hopefully testing with the turbidity sensor in the future.
Thank you. One last question. The UV light. In the written document, you talked about killing and you're talking about inactivating. When you talk about inactivating, is this a permanent condition? Is this something temporary?
So, I mean, we kind of use killing and inactivating to be the same. They're not going to come back to life. We're
Okay.
totally actually breaking the DNA with the UVC light. So it's actually used in industry as a sanitation method. So actually a lot of fume hoods and stuff like that in labs are equipped with UV lights to actually make sure there's no bacteria left on the table after testing. So it's permanent. And the reason we have so many lights in our system is because if any bacteria does get through, it can reproduce. So you want to make sure you kill it all. So we have way more contact time than we even tested with in our device, because we want to make sure even if a light goes out, that we'll be able to successfully purate the water.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your work. And I would like to ask a question about, actually, have you request any kind of sampling or problems that they have, or the water that they are in specific places, like close to rivers, because there are no much lakes in Cuba. So I would like to know, because that is very important in order to know that the devices that we're using for testing, the microelements will be the ones that we have to look for. Like the one that you mentioned there, like iron, manganese, aluminum, and chrome, but then you analyze lead, which is the most important, no? But aluminum and arsenic and mercury are the ones that we have to be more concerned from the human standpoint.
So we actually worked with one of our mentors, was working on biochar and its properties in absorbing heavy metals. And so we chose to test with lead on a kind of a time constraint. We had the ability to easily test for lead, and I felt like that was a representative sample. However, in the future, especially if this was going to be implemented in a large scale, we'd like to test with more materials to confirm this is going to make the water safe.
And we also had research from when we were doing our paper that things like aluminum and other metals like that are easily absorbed by biochar depending on the feedstock, and we were trying to confirm that through our own testing.
I think I can vouch for them a little bit since my PhD research is on activated carbon and mercury capture, but so Good vouching, girl team. Thank you so much for your presentation. At this time, we'll go ahead and welcome the team from Alabama as the last presenters. The University of Alabama team, Team Sabin, is represented here by Miss Elizabeth and Miss Lauren Weiss, and their industry mentors, Mr. Sergio Claude. They will be presenting today on the implementation of a bus transit system along the Independence in Havana, Cuba, and its positive impact on quality of life and the environment. Once they are done presenting, we will move on to lunch, and where the judges can deliberate on the top teams, and we'll come back and present that after lunch.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lauren Weiss.
And I'm Elizabeth Hardzog.
And we're seniors at the University of Alabama, both studying civil and environmental engineering. We would like to extend a thank you to our esteemed judges and also to our hosting committees for giving us the opportunity to come here today to talk more about our experience and about our research. We're also thrilled to be here representing Alabama for the first time.
So before we get into the logistics of our design, we kind of wanted to give you a background on where we felt confident enough to enter this. So in May of 2016, Lauren, myself, and 5 other students from the University of Alabama had the privilege to go down and study at CUHI, which is Havana's engineering university. We were led by 2 of our professors, and we also were taught lectures by the CUHI professors. And we spent many hours in the classroom as well as observing transportation issues within Havana, and so with that we felt that a bus rapid transit system was an urgent need for the public.
So as our objective was to establish a bus rapid transit system in Havana, we had to kind of determine where exactly the most need for that was. And so on this map, I've highlighted in red and the street in black. These are routes that appeared to be commuter routes that were heavily traveled in and out of Havana. And the route in black is the one that we chose to utilize for our feasibility study today. The route is La Avenida de la Independencia. And while we were in Cuba, we took part of this road to get to CUHI, and so we observed some public transportation issues from the buses and from the current infrastructure, the roadways, and this is why it was the road that we chose. As we began gathering data and really digging into this issue, we decided that there were some assumptions and considerations we needed to establish that would kind of guide our data collection. First of all, a lot of the data we were looking for, car ownership and car registration rates, or the amount of people that own those cars in Cuba, was not really readily available, except for maybe in the year 2005, which was a lot farther back than we wanted to go. So we did some interpolating and some estimation for some of that data, and we also looked at 3 other areas that have already established existing BRT systems, and we had to do a little bit of estimation for those same data sets as well. And we also decided to work within Havana's current infrastructure. That way we would not be building any new roads. We would be kind of building our BRT systems into the road, and it would keep costs down. And despite the despite establishing a BRT system as a mode of public transportation, we also recognize that people have their personal preferences for transportation, and so this may affect our ridership rates, which we will discuss later in the presentation.
Prior to collecting data, we had to determine how our design would fit into the existing infrastructure. And this is an accurate depiction of what we want to design. It has the bus-only lanes with the loading dock in the center of the lanes. And this is a more realistic picture. It has the center loaded lane with the 2 lanes and the projected entrance of passengers by crossing the crosswalk and entering through a prepaid entry to the terminal, and then they will then proceed to the elevated loading dock that is level with the bus to allow for a more time-efficient entry and exit of the bus.
The most important aspect of a BRT system is that it is incredibly efficient, and it's important to maintain a strict schedule and to maintain that efficiency. Otherwise, it's just another bus system. And so in order to abide by this efficiency, we decided to make the length of stops proportional to the population of an area. So if there is a large neighborhood around a stop that we are going to implement, or there were many shops, or there's a lot of economic activity, places where people would be getting on and off the bus, those stops would be longer to account for this. And then stops that were in lesser populated areas would be shorter because there would be less people.
And in order to establish that efficiency, we decided that the passengers would need to know of the bus arrival, and so we decided that sensors would be installed in the road with a 1-minute arrival countdown at the stop, so they could be prepared to enter and exit the bus in an efficient manner.
So this is a map of our route that we decided to implement along La Avenida de la Independencia. The left side is the southernmost point of the route, and the right side would be the northernmost point. So we have 11 stops along this route, which ends up being about 6 miles approximately in length. On the far left side is the northernmost point of the route, and in order to, like we were saying, increase efficiency, there's already a roundabout built into this area, so we decided our route, the bus on our route would simply go up to the top, stop, and then go around the roundabout to continue back down. And on the right picture, that's where our BRT system, our BRT corridor would end in the southernmost point, and we felt that it would be not too much of a challenge structurally to implement a roundabout there as well to allow for the buses to turn around. And the center picture is just a zoomed in example of one of the places where we added a stop. As you can see, it was difficult for us to really find any data about specific areas, like the population of neighborhoods or anything of that sort. So based on what we were able to see on Google Maps, it looks as if it would be a very populated area. So obviously, if we were going to implement this further, a more detailed analysis would need to be done at a later date, probably in conjunction with the Cuban government. So the next step in analyzing the implementation of this system was to attempt to estimate the ridership that we may see. And so we have an equation, a basic equation, to kind of come up with a number for that expected ridership. The best way that I could think to do this was to compare Havana, to the system we would like to implement, to several already otherwise implemented systems in Miami-Dade County. There are actually, I think, 8 corridors around the city and downtown area, and Curitiba, Brazil, and Bogota, Colombia. Obviously, the populations of these places differ slightly, and the number of registered cars is also, as you can see, quite higher. So we wanted to account for the differences in car registration, as you know, that's not, car ownership is not as common in Cuba. So we came up with a ratio of cars per person and divided each of those by Cuba's cars per person to kind of come up with a factor. And we were able to find BRT ridership as a percent of population from the Miami-Dade County, Curitiba, and Bogota in our research. And so we calculated those numbers and then multiplied that by the Cuban population, and we're able to come up with an average BRT ridership. So obviously this number could be, this number really depends on the population of Havana as a whole. So this would not be too much indicative of the specific route we chose, but if they were to implement several routes, the ones I highlighted in red earlier, that would be, that number there would be the total ridership that would occur along all of those corridors. As we analyzed the effectiveness of this situation, or of this system, excuse me, it was also important for us to study the specific environmental and economic impacts that the implementation would have on the people and also on the area.
As shown in the previous slides on the projector ridership, there is a large number that we have expected to utilize the bus rapid transit system. Having more passengers utilizing the system results in less cars on the road, which results in an increase in air quality. An increase in air quality is better for the public all around, as there are less pollutants in the air due to the lead-fueled cars that monopolize Havana.
Again, it was difficult to discover very costs, data for costs that we could apply specifically to Cuba, because costs for manual labor and costs for materials, costs for all sorts of other things that would be included in the construction cost would be quite different, I believe. But we came up with a very rough estimation to kind of show that we believe would be possible to implement. So from some data that we found from the National Cooperative Highway Research Program in the United States, they had done an example study, and their total construction cost was about $25 million, but their route length was 8 miles, so we found the cost per mile for that. And then we found the cost per station, as you can see there, because they had many more stations along their route than we wanted to implement. We used the US government's inflation calculator to kind of put that in 2017 numbers, just to get a more accurate number for today's standards. And from there, we multiplied both of those by the route length that we had chosen and the total number of stations, respectively, and came up with a total cost of $21 million, which I believe could possibly be lower based on all of those things I'd mentioned before about just the cost of labor and such. Well, after considering all of these factors that we presented today, we believe that it would be feasible to implement a bus rapid transit system in Havana. Further research would definitely need to be done to confirm what we believe we found. We think too, obviously, certain financial and structural steps would need to be taken to make this a more attainable goal for the future. But we believe it would be a worthwhile enterprise as it would improve the quality of life and hopefully the economic prosperity of the people who reside in Havana. Thank you.
Congratulations. It's also refreshing to see two female future engineers, and this is great. I'm very familiar with the Transmillennium in Bogota. I have taken ridership in the one in Mexico City, in Guatemala, Buenos Aires, Curitiba, and the only one I haven't taken but I have seen a lot is the one in Miami. Actually, we do have a BRT. It's along Dixie Highway. It goes south. It's totally useless. But that's a commentary on our system here. And that's because it's very costly, and at least in Miami, and most people have cars, and it doesn't go where people want to go. So it's always empty. Every time I saw it's empty. But I have taken, as I mentioned, the one in Mexico City and Transmilenio in Bogota. That's the first one, and Buenos Aires. And they're superb systems. The questions that I have, I'm not familiar with Avenida Independencia. Most systems are implemented on existing roads. So you have to have dedicated lines. The question is there a frequency that justifies such an investment for dedicated lines? Because you wouldn't be taking that from the rest of the public. So if you have like Buenos Aires, where you have about 10 bus lines competing in the same route, there's one every about 5 to 10 seconds, not minutes, then it's perfect sense. In Bogota, it's about 3 to 5 minutes at most. That makes sense. I don't know if if you have done any research since you've been there, whether there's the amount of space that you're going to be taking for the general public will be justified because of the frequency of the transportation of people.
So the road that we chose, La Avenida, I believe had 3 lanes going northbound, 3 lanes going southbound. So our idea was to widen it a little and to use the innermost 2 lanes as the specific bus lane and to put the platform or the shelter in the middle. And so I think there aren't, while we were there was traffic at certain times of the day, but it wasn't traffic like you would see rush hour here. So I think if we were able to implement this system and we were able to encourage or maybe like incentivize more people to take those buses instead of driving from point A to point B to get downtown, they could just take the bus and do that, and maybe that would also lessen the amount of cars on the road. So I think it could, or I don't think it would take away too much from the current drivers.
Your observation was that most people actually take their private cars rather than the buses in Cuba.
No, our observation was and speaking with our professors who worked at CUHI, it was taking up to 3 hours just to get to work in the morning, as they would be running late. So we felt that really anything more high speed versus the stop, stop, stop would be beneficial to the public, as they would be there quicker. And that's how we...
So it would be a system that actually would take just skip some stops and go to the general stops.
Yes, it is designed to have more length in between, because if you have too many stops, you might as well just take the regular bus that stops every block or so.
And also, part of the BRT systems involves creating a certain corridor. So I know when I was doing some research on Miami's, they have like a southeast corridor that goes down a specific lane and a northeast corridor. And so our corridor would hopefully go, so as we mentioned, our professors at CUHI had to travel a ridiculous amount of time to get to work. So perhaps there would be a specific corridor going from a certain area and going past places where they might live just to CUHI, or not just to CUHI, but going out to that area and then coming back in to increase efficiency.
Congratulations, and I'm glad to see 2 females in transportation. Okay, that's outstanding. Bus rapid transit, and it is near and dear to my heart. And my first question, I think you may have answered it, is when you picked Avenida Independencia, did you compare what you were solving, the speed issue? Because bus rapid transit, typically, you're taking a lot of people from one point to another. And like you said, I think in your answer, you don't want to stop. But the question to you is, did you consider the cost benefit of separating a lane and dedicating the lane versus just running express bus service? Just changing where you pick up one bus and you go stop and the other one is express, rather than all of the infrastructure changes?
We didn't look specifically into that, mainly because we were looking for, I guess, just newer systems to implement. And we had some guidance from our professor, Dr. Stephen Jones, who's also very supportive of BRT implementation. And so we kind of just ran with that idea. We tried to do, as you saw our cost or economic impact on our slide, we tried to do a sort of cost-benefit analysis, but it would be difficult to really ascertain the benefit of a system like that unless you had accurate, cost projections, or 5 years down the road you were able to see that it worked or if it didn't.
I am a huge fan of BRT, just so you know. And what intrigued me about your paper is that in thinking of a new Cuba, New Havana, and the opportunities for economic development, and then you look at your research and you see that there is a 0.03 cars per person, there's a tremendous opportunity to develop a transit system in Havana that is non-car dependent, rather than what most people do, which is try to retrofit a city away from car dependency, and then it becomes the challenges that Doctor said. So that was what intrigued me. That's why I asked the question. There's steps to it, but I'm a big fan of BRT, and congratulations.
Thank you. Can I add something? Sure. Okay, so also we observed, this is also why we decided to do the full kind of re-infrastructure on what exists, is because as of right now, tourists just don't take public transit. And so we thought it would be a very reliable investment, as even while we were there in the 2 weeks when they allowed the first cruise ship from America into Havana, like tourism was just insanely peaking. And so it's just a matter of time before it's overflowing with tourists, and it has huge potential.
Gonna be easy. Okay, it's close to lunch. Being familiar with traffic in Latin America, I ignore in Havana how many traffic signals you have in your routes. But did you consider some type of sensor that will turn those lights to allow the bus to transit from one point to the other as fast as it could? And God willing, do they obey the traffic lights?
That was something we thought about, because we also noticed there that sometimes traffic rules were more of suggestions as opposed to actual rules.
It's here, same as here.
Yes.
So we did consider that, and we kind of thought of it actually because we were thinking about what to do for people who wanted to turn left out of the lane if there was a bus lane going through. So we decided that there would kind of be a delayed signal, so the bus would be allowed to go first through the station would be able to be allowed to go first through the intersection, and then all the other cars would be able to turn, would be able to go when the light turned green.
I think that's important in getting from one place to the other in a timely manner in Latin America.
Again, congratulations. Something that I didn't see, and you didn't present here either, is cost per ridership. Because with the wages that are being paid in Cuba, I don't think this would work for the Cuban public, probably would work for tourists. I just wonder if you did any of those studies.
I think that in time, well, since these are specific corridors that are established, obviously they don't go everywhere like the current bus system or the current bus infrastructure would. But I think the fares that the average Cuban citizen pays for the normal bus could also be the same that they would pay for this bus rapid transit, and this would just take the place of the bus that they would normally take. And our hope too was to take the buses that they already have and attempt to retrofit them for this bus rapid transit purpose. So in that case, we could take some of the buses away from those routes that already exist and put them into this BRT corridor to help. Yeah.
And another solution we discussed, which is, it was kind of hard to depict right now as the CUC changes every time you visit, would be to charge tourists more money to ride using the CUC versus the Cuban peso, and they would get kind of a discounted rate until it paid for itself, and then you could break it even. And so that would just require so much research that we didn't have the data for, and with the currency changing so much, but that was something we investigated on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to share her thoughts because for all of these teams, so, yeah. For all of these teams, one of the main things I do want to comment on, and as this process goes, when we started with 30 participants and 30 letters of intent back in October, one of the main hard or downfalls is that we don't have any specific data on Cuba. We don't have the intellectual knowledge that nothing is in the public sector. So if you're looking at waste generation or water pollutants or any of that discharge, it's pretty difficult to look at those numbers. And I think the work that those 6 teams and all of the others that submitted a report were able to compile based on the data that is available in looking at, for example, mimicking a Puerto Rican waterfall to Cuba or water system is certainly what we expect to do because we don't have any of that data. And again, some of these projects we're looking at, it's not necessarily feasible to integrate it into the current government. I know we mentioned some of the biochar that the Cuban government is developing right now. The hope is that that does move on forward and they could potentially integrate it in a more free and economically different government. So thanks again for everybody that presented, the top 6 teams. At this time, we will take a break for lunch. So those of you viewing will be back at 1 p.m. for the awards ceremony. So stick around with us. We'll take a quick short lunch break. And for all of those in the room, I would like to, for everybody, before you go to the food, we'll do a 5-minute, no more than 5 minutes, we promise. We want to take a group picture to make sure that we save this moment and keep it with us. So if you can walk out those back doors and we'll meet outside before we get lunch, and then we'll come right back at 1. Thank you. If you guys want to leave your booklets up on top in the little area, Good afternoon. I would like to welcome everybody back from lunch. Welcome back our viewers online. Thanks for waiting patiently for the scores. The judges have spent almost an hour here looking at the scores and looking at how each team presented in comparison to their written reports. Once again, the written reports will count as 40% of the final score, and the presentation you all saw here today will make up the rest of the 60. Before we get started, I would like to thank the two associations again and run through a couple of things before we announce the winners. One of the things that both associations are here very proud of is the 2017 Gala, and that will be held here in Miami two Saturdays from today on the 25th. And we encourage everybody to participate. And if you have any questions, I don't know who I'm reporting questions to, but Jose Acosta or Mr. Teo Cuervo will certainly be able to help you get a ticket. The tickets are on both of the websites, and you can purchase those at your convenience. The 2017 Gala, typically this year we're going to look at all of the engineering professionals who do so much for our field of Cuban descent. So it's an engineer's day for our city here. The other comment that I would like to and get Dr. Solo up here is the 2017 ACE conference. Typically, most of these projects that are presented here today, we tell the students that and emphasize to them to submit their projects for the ACE conference. And Dr. Solo, the president of the organization, is here to tell you a little bit more about that.
As mentioned, my name is Helena Solo Gabriel, and my regular job, I am a professor of civil and environmental engineering. I'm also a member of both engineering organizations and also help out with the Cuba Infrastructures Challenge. But I'm here now because I am also serving as the president of the Association for the Study of the Cuban Economy. I'd like to put a plug in for our conference that will be held here in Miami between July 27th through the 29th. We are accepting abstracts for the regular conference and also abstracts for the student papers. The student paper competition, I think, is the next slide. And we have prizes for student papers, and again, it's here in Miami. The student who won the paper award last year talked about water and wastewater in Cuba. And so the association, although we're called the Association for the Study of the Cuban Economy, those on the board interpret economy very broadly to also include infrastructure. And so if you have projects related to infrastructure, related to the economy, those papers would be invited, and we have a lot of fantastic papers that were presented here. Those can be adjusted, modified, maybe enhanced on the economic side of things, on the cost estimation, and can be submitted for the competition. So we invite all students, and if you are professional members in the audience, if you'd like to present as well, we invite submission of abstracts for inclusion in the conference. Thank you.
I wanted to follow up on the gala, and this year we're actually celebrating one of our judges, Mr. Rafael Palacios, as the Engineer of the Year. So for those of you who would like to hear more from him, congratulations on that. So as mentioned, one of the main things for these two organizations that put together the Cuban Infrastructure Competition is membership. All of those here from today, the winners and the students will be able to participate through the membership program. So why do we want to be a member? So one of the main things for both organizations, both the Cuban engineers and the civil engineers, is really the mentorship and outreach of here in the city and across nationwide. So if you have any interest in becoming a member, you don't have to be of Cuban descent, and most likely you will be an engineer if you're here, but please pay attention to Mr. Jose Acosta or Jerry Fernandez in the back that can be able to get you a membership and be able to enjoy the benefits of the engineering program going forward. At this time, I would like to present our judges who have graciously provided their time and effort out here with some thank you awards, and perhaps Mr. Jose and Teo can come up here to present these. The first award I have up here is for Mr. Rafael Palacio. If you can come up and receive your plaque of...
Thank you, dear.
Can you move forward so we can knock your screen a little forward? Thank you. Can we have Mr. Javier Rodriguez? Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Mario Sergio Golab. First timer and hopefully lifetimer. Dr. Vladimir Cruz, a lifetimer. Since the beginning?
Since the beginning.
And last but not least, a new Mr. Eduardo Infante. Soon to be lifetimer too. Next year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. At this time, I would also like to welcome, if you can stay up here, Ms. Maria Porrata to present the Delphin Mullins Award. If I can share a little bit about the mentors in this process, and mentorship is such a big part of this organization, and all of the industry mentors from the two associations were assigned to each of the teams, and they were able to assist not just with the technology side, but with the application side, and this is what you saw today. So this award is on behalf of Mr. Delphin Mullins, and I'm hoping that Maria can give a little bit more introduction to that than I can.
Delphin Mullins was a president of the Cuban-American Association of Civil Engineers. He was the one that would really stand at every single gala, reaching out for people to be involved and to give back something to this community. He came at a very early age from Cuba. His dad was a wonderful engineer, came from a family of engineers. And I remember working with him on a daily basis. Delphin, at the time of his death, of a sudden heart attack, had suffered through so many different adversities that life brought to his health, with health issues, but he never gave up. He worked with me extremely hard on a national program called Future Cities. And I remember him going to Future Cities with me at the national competition representing this organization right after complete hip replacement. He always had a smile and he always attracted everyone. So I'm very proud to present this award this year to someone who is following his footsteps, and is presented to a dear friend and a civil engineer, Eric Sevilla.
Mr. Eric Sivila is the industry mentor for the FIU team, Sol Urbano, and he was their main mentor. You want to move a little bit forward? So without further ado, everybody's waiting for the special moment. We will start with announcing those that received a participation award. So those that were not in the top 3, however, with very, very high scores. Some of these scores were almost decimal points in difference. So I really want to thank everybody because everybody here is a winner. So those that received a participation award or did not make it to the top 3, they will be receiving a $600 scholarship. So everybody's a winner here today. However, first prize will be $6,000. Second prize will be $4,000, and then third prize will be $2,000 scholarship award for the whole team. So if we start from the participation awards, I would like to invite the team from the University of Alabama, Team Sabin, to receive their participation award. Their team mentor is Mr. Sergio Claude. If he can also come up and receive that award. Do you girls want to stand forward? And then I'll let you go. I did want to mention that the scores are very, very close on that one. The second team I would like to welcome up here is the University of Florida team, Gator Cooling, and their team mentor, Miss Maggie. Is Maggie here? Maybe not. Nope, that's not it. Hold on. Sorry. Thank you. Up next, I would like to welcome up here to the stage the Florida International University team, Sol Urbano, and their mentor, Mr. Eric. And now we're going to move into third place, which is where things get exciting. When can we get some drum rolls? No drum rolls? They have traveled far to where we're at today, and I would like to congratulate the University of Missouri, Team UMCK, and their permeable concrete. If you can come up here. With their mentor, is Leonard still here? Andrew? Check goes to you. Oh, this is second place, sorry. Brian? Brian?
Congratulations.
You guys want to go up there? Congratulations. In second place, and this is where the race got really, really tight. In second place, I would like to welcome the team from Florida International, or Florida Institute of Technology.
Great job, guys.
I could hear some preemptive celebration in the back.
Very well deserved.
And for the final surprise, can we welcome the University of Florida Team Kauto, Ms. Carlin, Margaret, Julia, and Sarah for their first place win.
Thank you so much. Super job. Thank you. Do you girls want to come in? School up a little bit. Show you Christina. Oh, Christina, get over here.
She was wonderful. Shout out to Christina, guys.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, girls. Congratulations.
At this time, I will open the floor to Mr. Teo Cuervo and Jose Acosta to give some concluding remarks. I do want to thank everybody for being here and the teams that have traveled from very near and very far as Alabama and Missouri. So that is very, very exciting as we grow on our competition. But take it over.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the judges for your patience and the time that you have devoted. You folks have to understand that all this is volunteer work. Nobody's getting paid here for the amount of hours that everybody has placed into doing this process. And we also have to thank Regina, Roger, and their team members for the perseverance and the drive. They have a tremendous drive in getting this program to the place where it is today. It has grown tremendously, and it's a crucial program that we have because you are the future. We already are in mothballs or entering mothballs, but you are the future, and you're getting a unique opportunity to apply what you have studied in textbooks into a real practical problem, and you have found a solution. This would be with you the rest of your life. This experience that you have gone through, this process, would accompany you the rest of your life. It's the first step of hopefully many more that you will be able to grow and be able to apply in a not too distant future to a very needed situation, both here domestically, but around the world also. Cuba is one of the worst. It's at the bottom of the all the statistics, put it way down. Only Haiti is in worse shape than Cuba is right now. So congratulations, put all that effort. You have to be, I see it in your presentations, in the work that you have done, you have passion. Keep that passion the rest of your life. If you don't have a passion for what you're doing, you're going to be destined to failure. Give it all you have and do what you like, what you feel it in your heart, and you will be a success always. If I have I had a mentor one time that taught me something very important. Look at every situation and try to find a pearl. What is it that I can take from this situation that I can keep for myself and for my future? And I would suggest, if you have not done it yet, you're going to be, this was an exercise. Perhaps for you it's the first time that you do a public speaking event, but do take a course in public speaking. When I was in the college, I said, what, public speaking? When? No, it really gave me the base that I was able to then do public speaking, presentations, feel comfortable about, and then know how to use the microphone. Don't get over here. Or, you know, if we had a lapel, but try to work so that your voice carries, how you express yourself, and also if you have a laser pointer, that is also good so that you can point to the presentation. But that's what I can give to you from my experience. Again, congratulations and thanks to all of you.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. My name is Jose Acosta. I'm the president of the Cuban-American Association of Civil Engineers. First and foremost, congratulations to everybody here. There's been so many folks involved that are integral to this process, led by Regina, led by Roger, led by the rest of the board. Thank you to both boards for all their efforts, and everybody has a hand in the cookie jar of this. Thank you to the judges, those of you who just did it this year and who've done it before. As you can see, this is very critical and important to the future, not just Cuba, but our community and our environment. We're in such a multifaceted ethnic community that it's just a perfect place and a perfect time to do these types of events. Thank you to all the students, the 30-some schools that submitted, that had the idea of doing it, those of you who got this far, and those all the way in between or that are looking at us in cyber world. We are committed to seeing this through. And the passion comes from you. You could feel the energy about trying to have this vision for a future successful democratic Cuba. And that's done via the infrastructure route, via protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public, which is what we're here for. It's what we're about. I also want to specifically mention the mentors, each of you that spend that time with these students and be able to go back and forth. That networking is key to what this is all about, which is to get you guys ready to be positioned to come up with the next round of thinking beyond Cuba and everything, just to make a better world for all of us. So thank you so very much. One plug I do want to mention regarding the gala that both of our organizations are having on the 25th. Those of you who are in town or aren't, that we celebrate the Day of the Engineer, El Día del Ingeniero, every year. It's very important to us because it's about taking all these things and really celebrating the things that kind of get taken for granted in our regular everyday, turning on Fox News or MSNBC or whichever side of that game you play, to see the good things that happen that are a result of the hard work that people in this room and others do. And that's important. The good news always gets missed in the midst of all of this, and we need to be focusing on it because that's what brings the passion, the thought to strive for the next level, the next big thing for the growth of our world and hopefully the growth of the U.S. and Cuba. I also want to note that the 30 schools or 30 teams that submitted, it was a test of a vision from folks from both groups. We understand that may grow, and we're trying to prepare for that as a team. And we're excited about it, and it's because of all of you and the efforts that you guys took to really apply and do these things. So thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Regina, the microphone's yours. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say a few words at the end. This actually culminates a year of hard work. We start, some of our work beginning again. In April, second Monday, by the way, the folks members of the committee, second Monday, 5:30 p.m. We're going to give us March off or April, and we'll begin the cycle for next year, and we'll go first on lessons learned from this year so we can apply into next year, and have a even bigger competition. Now, I want to basically address everyone here. There is no losers. I want you to change the name Participation to Excellence Award. And that's a suggestion that Pete Martinez, one of my friends, gave me, because there's not a participation award. A participation doesn't fully describe what you guys did. So as you fill out your resumes, be free to say Excellence Award. We're going to try to also, I'm going to ask the mentors, and I know Pete Martinez again already did it, to write a letter to each of you, basically thanking you for what you did, and so you can also use the letter for your resumes when you actually go out and interview with companies, or if you're going to proceed for the Master's or PhD program, to do the same. We understand the amount of time that you actually put forth to do this, and we really appreciate it. And all we want to do is continue to expand this. So if you can sell this in your universities, we really would appreciate it. And we would like for you guys to become mentors also. We have had alumni of this that have become mentors. Sergio, Eric, Cristina, Jose Enrique, Cueto. So we've had a lot of people that are mentors that we may call upon you to be mentors next year. So be ready for that, and as we continue to expand. The other thing that I want to reemphasize again is the only way that these organizations are going to continue to flourish is to have new blood. Regina is an example. She's a board member of the Association of Cuban-American Engineers, a very young board member, but she's not the only young person that we have. We really need to start looking for young people. Jose and Cristina are board members of the civil organization. Young people, they don't have to have a Cuban background or Hispanic background or whatever to become members of the organization, so that we can take this organization into the future. We can do a lot of good things. And that's all I have to say. I'm going to turn it over to the key person here, Regina, and thank you for everything.
Just to close out, I did want to remind everybody that if you are interested in mentoring a team in agriculture, transportation, water and wastewater treatment, and any of the other informatics and healthcare, please make sure that you jot that down at when you walked in. We had that sign-in sheet. Do you want to be a member? Do you want to be called upon in 2018 as we start to receive these applications? So don't be hesitant. If you are graduating this year and want to become more involved, please do so. Also, please make sure that you did sign in so that we do have a count of who participated today, if possible. As we close out, I did want to thank, and very, very much thank, the members of the committee that puts this program together: Roger, Helena, Jerry, Christina, Victor, Maria, Deo, Pete, Jose, Betty, who couldn't be here today, Mr. Alfonso, who's getting married today, Miguel, Armando, very, very key people in this program, Jose Enrique, Sergio, Tony, Bert, and Miss Blanca, who was a great addition to our team this year. We couldn't have done this without you guys. And then, as we close out, our partners and sponsors, Booyah Gastrobar, Click Event, the Institute for Advanced Study of the Americas, and then the Institute for Cuban and Cuban-American Studies here in Casa Bacardi. So I really appreciate everybody coming in today.
If you haven't been to Booyah, go tonight.
Yeah.
They have tomorrow for brunch. It's an excellent place. You got to make reservations there.
Go to the right one. Strongly recommend.
Yeah. There's
Okay.
one in the Gables, one in the Rock.
Did you want to?
Excellent.
We do have Mrs. Delphine Mullins, Tere Mullins, who was able to join us last minute. So we did award.
I'm sorry she was delayed by adversities beyond her control. But I just wanted to say about Tere is that Delphine loved this organization so much and the field of engineering that he had it on his will without knowing that he was about to die a letter to Tere saying that he was leaving a scholarship to this organization under his name for anyone who actually attended his alma mater, University of Miami, and that the scholarship would always be there. I want to thank on behalf of both organizations, the Delphine Mullins family, especially Tere, that was always there in every event that I witnessed through my 30 plus years of friendship with Delphine and Tere. And if you want to say anything, Tere?
No, Maria's right. This was Delphine's VP. It meant a lot to him. He grew up with his dad in this organization. So to him, it was his family and el Colegio Ingeniero. When he was growing up, that's all he knew. He wanted to be an engineer. And growing up, he said, this is going to be my life, and I'm going to follow my father's footsteps, and he did. He became twice the president of the organization, and it meant so much to him that in that letter, he made sure that he wrote that. I didn't know that until he passed away. And so I make sure that I follow that. And I know that he would be very proud to see all of you here and to see me representing him. So I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, even though on a sad note, we will end the event, even though it was a great, great pleasure to have you all here today. So thank you so much.